Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
Tango Shalom is now available on all VOD
major platforms. I think we messed that up.
Video on demand, or as they say in the trade, VOD.
VOD. Tango Shalom is now available on all VOD platforms,
which means
video on demand.
Look how you know. You must be a high school graduate.
I'm a college graduate.
Really?
Yes.
I got an honorary degree from Hofstra. Did you get an honorary degree?
No, I got a degree.
Oh, well, I got honorary. You know, I'm in the Jewish Museum.
What for?
What do you mean? As a famous Jew in the Bronx. I'm in the famous...
I'm in the Prospect Park in the Stones.
How big is the stone?
Hello, and welcome to Midnight Metal.
Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude. Tonight, this is episode Special Order 66 of Midnight Metal. You're all going to get gunned down if you're not watching your backs. That's all I'm saying. We have a great episode tonight. We've got Lael, Rockwell, and we've got all the way from the special edition of the San Diego Comic-Con, which is the first Comic-Con I haven't been to since 1988 so far. Maybe I'll get down there. Who knows? We got so much to talk about, but without further ado, 1/6 scale man himself, Lael Rockwell, and of course, you know her. You love her. She is... Welcome to Midnight Metal, YouTube. Midnight Metal Special Order 66. Watch out. Palpatine is after us.
Yes.
His clone troopers are going to turn on our asses when we're not looking. And I know Lael has a lot of clone troopers in his house. What about you? Well, you're away from your house, so it doesn't matter. But there's plenty of cosplaying clone troopers that could be dangerous. So you got to be careful. So I want to jump right into it. It's your first San Diego Comic-Con. I know it's not the official comic. I mean, it is. But I got to hear it. You know, you're a Comic-Con virgin. Am I right?
Yes, for San Diego. This is the first one that I've ever been to. That's correct.
When was the last time you could say you were a virgin for anything? Am I right? Just kidding. Come on. Now, it's San Diego. It's San Diego. You're at San Diego. You've never been there before. First time?
I've never been to this Comic-Con, but I have been to San Diego before. So it's my first San Diego Comic-Con, yes.
Tell me the tale. You've sent me some very, very great pictures of you with members of the Post-Geek Singularity. You've been meeting up with a few people at the Comic-Con. I'm sorry. You know, my mind's one-track brain. Thinking about hot toys. The word hot. I get, you know. So you're at San Diego. Tell me everything. Tell me your impressions of the con. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it's fantastic. Coming back from a year where everything was canceled and locked down, it's definitely come back full force. Obviously, there aren't as many people, and we have to wear masks just like in the New York Comic Con. There were plenty of booths, plenty of things to buy and see, a lot of creators who were in Artist Alley. There were figures here, and I can't remember. I think there were so figures or third-party figures that were there because I saw a lot of Walking Dead figures, 1/6 scale figures. And I've actually ordered a few of those before, like Ezekiel and Morgan, which were both third parties. So I got to see them in person because they were there at the Comic Con. But I didn't even make it through the whole floor. I mean, I met Julian Mushkin, who lives in San Diego, as well as Sunny Dominguez, who drove down from LA to go to the con. In addition to going to several panels, I went to panels pretty much about everything. There were so many good ones, but I went to one that talked about romance in science fiction and horror and fantasy, which you knew I would have to
Of course you did.
Yes. I honestly wish they had one that was like sex in science fiction, horror, and fantasy, but that's okay.
Why don't you run that panel next year?
I would love to. I was actually going to say we should have a PGS panel at San Diego Comic-Con. I think that would be fantastic.
Oh, I'm totally going to. I think we can get that. I think we can get that panel. I will totally sign up for that in 2022.
Okay. And then also there were a bunch of movie screenings, movies that I guess had just been released. I saw a movie. I can't remember. Oh, it had like a very unusual name. It was a Filipino film, and it was called Lumpia, and they kind of handed out. It's actually a food and a traditional food. And they made a movie from it, from a Kickstarter campaign that started in 2017. And
Wow.
we got to, we saw a screening of it tonight, and it was fantastic. And they also showed other films as well. And I just had to leave. I didn't want to leave it, but they were screening Die Hard, and I always wanted to kind of see that film here in California, or even in a movie theater, because I first saw Die Hard like in a VHS tape. So this was the first time that I've ever seen Die Hard it's actually in, I think they said it was in 4K.
Yeah, there's probably a new transfer.
Yeah. And it looked beautiful. It was it was just great to even be at the con and seeing a movie like this, because there were people there who'd never seen Die Hard. So I knew I had to show up to this thing, and there was just so much going on, Robert, between the signings and special offers, and it was really so much to keep you busy. And the convention center is enormous, so I did like maybe 12,000 steps today.
Yeah. Very familiar. Now, are you staying in one of the hotels, or you're staying with your friend? Where are you staying?
Yeah, I'm staying with a friend, and I'm not too far outside of the downtown
Nice.
San Diego. I have a whole list of things that I want to see tomorrow. Brett Spiner was here today.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so there were a lot of people who I know. Julian went to see Brett Spiner, so I know he was looking really forward to that, and I'm assuming that he was there for that presentation, which a lot of people, it was so many people were waiting for that, but they had 20th anniversary of films like Spirited Away. I was looking to see if they were going to have Arcane there, because everybody's been talking about this anime, like it's the hottest anime out there right now. Everybody loves Arcane, but I didn't see anything about Arcane. But it doesn't matter, because they might still have something on Arcane. But I have just there's been so much going on at this Comic-Con that I'm just thrilled. I just can't get to anything fast enough to satisfy myself. So I've been having a great time, and I'm so excited for tomorrow. I'm looking forward to. I have made a list of things I want to attend. It's really been great, Robert. This has been a great Comic-Con coming out of a year where we didn't have anything really.
Yeah.
It is very similar. It reminds me of New York a lot, because there is room to walk around, which is not the norm. But
certainly
that's okay.
not the norm in San Diego.
Yeah,
it's usually choked.
And it's not super. Yeah, it's not super hot. It's not super crowded. You can still walk around. You can still talk to people. It's just been such a pleasure to have that experience again. And I've been wanting to do that because people have been asking me, they're like, why did you go to the San Diego Comic-Con? And it's because I'm just so tired of being at home. I want to be able to reach out to people. And this is, the fandom is important to me and just have that experience. We all want to have that experience and we're waiting for all these things to return back. So I just had to come to this one because I just wanted to experience the fun of it. And it is fantastic. I've just been having such a great time. So
I know you're wearing a mask, but did anyone recognize you and stop you? Say, "Oh my
I
God,
don't know.
No?"
I don't know. I mean, I walk around so fast, Robert. Like I'll go on that floor 2 or 3 times.
So you're a New Yorker.
Yes, I suppose so. But I was determined to just like cover the floors. But this is a massive Comic-Con. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this one was bigger than the one in New York. It's got to be bigger.
Oh, and it's only half the size it normally is.
And this is just on. If it were the full size, I wouldn't have been able to cover everything. But I just was so impressed and just having a really good time here. I really just, it's fantastic, Robert. I have to say.
Well, I'm glad that's good to hear. I'm glad that we're representing for you all the way from the East Coast. Because, there's that rivalry, Tupac, Biggie, all that kind of thing. Want to make sure that we represent.
No, that's not where comics, though. We don't have a comic East Coast, West Coast comic rivalry.
Well, back when Image Comics started, there kind of was. There was the West Coast style, there was the Jim Lee style, there was the Rob Liefeld style.
Yep.
That was kind of the California style, and there was a Chicago style, but a New York style, which was the old school style.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say that we didn't have diss tracks in comic books, or maybe we did. I wasn't aware of them, but there could have been. Yeah. Biggie. It wasn't like somebody was doing that freestyle rapping outside the Brooklyn. That little
Bodega.
Yeah. Well, that is the greatest thing. If you guys want to see if you want to see a star turn in the making, look up Biggie Smalls freestyles. Was in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I mean, you watch that and you're like, oh, okay, that guy's a star. He was like 18 when he did it or something. Anyway, I digress. Now, Lael, before we get to the topic at hand, I would be remiss if I did not talk about what Hot Toys has done to the collector's market. Blew it up today. Blew it up.
Yes,
I wonder if you might enlighten the audience. I mean, they got metal on our asses with some releases that are going to cost us a pretty penny. What did Hot Toys do today, Lael?
Well, here's the thing. Like, let's kind of set this up.
You set the stage, sir.
We'll set the stage because earlier this week we got the early release of the black and gold Spider-Man suit from No Way Home. Something that we knew was coming, but we didn't anticipate it coming as early as it did.
I thought it was 2022 at least.
Exactly, and this is precedent because it's like basically the first time that we've actually got a figure from an IP before it was released. You know what I mean? Before, you know what I mean? Now we've probably gotten it before. It hasn't happened in a long time that we've actually gotten a figure before its actual release. So we're getting this Spider-Man black and gold suit, which they pushed out quick before we actually got this film. A lot of people were looking at it, wondering if they should have got it or if they should get it. Here it is. It's now. So
did you get it?
Me? So here's the thing. I have it on pre-order, but I actually didn't get it through Toys Wonderland or an overseas company. I originally pre-ordered this figure through Sideshow. So I actually have it through them. Now I can get it now if I want to, but I'm just sort of waiting. I'm just waiting, and I'm sort of glad I did because all this heat that is automatically now, mind you, let's set it first. We now have finally gotten, which here's my thing, as I was kind of torn when they revealed this figure. We finally got the battle damaged upgrade suit from, that's a whole. This is a second topic 2. Yeah. So we'll get to that. But basically, so we've gotten now. Number one, they did release Venom, so they released a secondary Venom. So we actually did get that Venom figure. Now, if you didn't actually get a chance to get the first official release of Venom.
Now explain why they dropped this second Venom. I mean, people are still waiting for their first Venom figures, and it's a Venom figure from the first Venom.
Yeah.
Now tell the folks at home why Hot Toys releasing another Venom figure today was significant, and what about this figure is different than the first one that came out that people are still waiting for?
Well, what's different about this figure, which is kind of crazy, because here's the thing. They gave us, now, if you look at the production photos, not even the production photos, but if you look at the reveal photos, a lot of them are still from the original batch. So they mixed that with this new release, which now actually gives us the head sculpt of Tom Hardy, and it's like the mashup between
Let me
Tom
throw
Hardy
that
and
up.
Venom.
I just coincidentally, I happen to have that shot right here. Now, this is something, so for the people that that didn't order the original Venom figure, or did order the original and just got the Venom figure, this figure's only been out for a couple months. It didn't have a Tom Hardy head sculpt, and people love, like, this head sculpt is exquisite. And so there's a lot of people that are kind of pissed off. I mean, I've read a lot of, and here's a couple of, here's another glimpse of, this looks like it's from the first release of the Venom figure, but here's another look at Venom, and then you go back to this, and this is what everybody wanted. So it's something that it was Hot Toys has never done this before. Usually they've re-released figures years later.
Yeah, they did. And
now, how do you feel about this?
Well, here's the thing. So to everyone who has not received the first Venom, if you still have it on pre-order, if it's still coming to you, do not cancel. And I'm gonna tell you why. If you actually you can still get that figure, but if you already also have Carnage on order, Carnage actually comes with this head sculpt. You know what I mean? So you're getting this same head sculpt with Carnage. So depending on when they're going to decide to release this particular figure, we don't know if we're going to get it next year or if it's going to be a 2023. We don't know how it's going to actually happen. So you got to wait and see. But if you already have this figure on order, do not cancel it, because if you have the Carnage figure, you're going to actually pick up this head sculpt. Now, only differences between that one and this one is the simple fact that it does come with that metal spike or that metal piece that he actually had when he was fighting Carnage in the film. So look, if you want to get it, you can, but I wouldn't cancel if you still have it. But for those who never or didn't get a chance to pre-order it, it's your chance to now get the Venom that you want.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think, even though they haven't shown us, do you think they're going to give us an Eddie Brock mid-transformation head sculpt in the Carnage figure now? Because we're getting this? Kind of like when they... know. I mean, when they announced the Eric Killmonger figure, it first didn't come with a Michael B. Jordan head sculpt, and then they added that afterwards.
Yeah, it's a high possibility. I mean, it's a possibility because, like I said, people want it. I mean, it makes more sense now. I mean, considering the simple fact that we're getting a chance to basically see this, and they know that there's an audience for it, and everybody wants it. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to actually get that head sculpt. So it would make more sense to include the half Eddie Brock. I mean, not Eddie Brock. Half what is it? Cletus.
Did I say Cletus? Right? Yeah. Did I say Eddie Brock?
I keep forgetting. It's Cletus. Cletus Cassidy.
Yeah.
That they would get that half Cletus Cassidy, half Carnage head sculpt. It would make more sense if they did so, and they'll probably do it. I mean, I think that's something that they're going to do. They're probably already thinking about it. We might even get a reveal before the figure is released. Production photos. They might give us like update photos, so we could actually see it then. So it's the perfect time to kind of introduce it. But but see, the thing is, we had known, or we have gotten, I guess like earlier leaks or earlier info that we got was correct when they said that we were going to get another Venom. Now, here's the thing. Think about this, okay? And I was thinking about this earlier when we actually got this reveal today. In light of the post-credit scene that we actually got from Venom, the film, okay? Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. Post-credit scene shown that, of course, Venom was aware of the multiverse and aware of Tom's Spider-Man, so Tom Holland's Spider-Man. So he was completely aware of it. Now, do you believe, and this could just be, I mean, we don't know yet.
When you say do you believe, it sounds like the beginning of a Disney musical. song
Right.
from like Frozen
But-
3.
Exactly. Do you think that, I mean, if we could preference this way, do you think that they're giving us probably a sneak peek or a teaser that Venom could actually show up in this film and No Way Home? And that's why they're releasing this figure. Do you think possibility? There's a possibility?
Well, as Spock said to Kirk once, there are always possibilities. But if you're
Exactly.
asking me to give you a definitive answer, I think yes.
You think so?
Look, I think this Spider-Man, the Marvel movies, whenever they show us trailers, they usually pick 2 or 3 scenes, and everything we see are from those scenes.
Yeah.
I think we've only scratched the surface with Spider-Man No Way Home. I think on Monday the tickets go on sale. They'll probably drop another trailer or something to get all the tickets sold. I think somebody said that John Campea said on his show today, they're going to sell all the tickets by dropping another trailer. But I have to say, I did bust on the black and gold Spider-Man suit because I had points at Toys Wonderland. I had points at Sideshow, so I got Death Watch Mando as well. And I wasn't going to get the black and gold suit, but it was because of Ryan Kirkwood. He had a picture, and he was showing how he took some magic from his Doctor Strange suit and put it with the thing that's showing the And I looked at that suit, and I'm like, I have to tell you, once I saw the close-up pictures of it with all the different, the design in the suit, I'm like, oh, I got to have that.
It makes sense.
Yeah, so I got that. Now, so we got Venom, and then they also dropped, you were saying about the Spider-Man, the battle damage suit. Tell us about that.
Damage. Yeah, the battle damage upgrade suit. And it wasn't something. Now, come to think is, it's not something I can't say I didn't expect to happen because of the simple fact that we knew that we were going to get multiple suits from this film. My only thing was, I was like, okay, we got that reveal, and look, if for those who haven't seen it, that diorama base is the price of admission by itself. Like that, it's its own character.
Let me just let me throw this up. So what Lael is talking about is this. But it looks like the suits. It says the battle damage suit, the battling version, but it looks like it's not black. That it's blue. There's I don't know what the lighting, but here it is. Like you said, it comes with the diorama base. It comes with whatever that box is that he steals from Doctor Strange. And this was unexpected. And they've done movie promo editions before. They've done that with Captain America. I think they did it with an Iron Man figure. But what this tells me is that Hot Toys, I thought they were putting out a lot of figures from The Mandalorian. But my God, are they all in on Spider-Man?
So this doesn't, and you're right. I'm glad you mentioned that battling, because it doesn't say battle damaged. It just says battling. You know what I mean? So I think it's just like it has a few scuffs and everything on it. It looks like it might be damaged slightly, but it just says battling. So the wording is totally different from what we are used to getting and what we're used to receiving. But yeah, my only thing was, I wish we'd have gotten. It would have made sense for us to get this suit during Far From Home, because remember, it was battle damage during his battle with Mysterio,
Right?
And it would have been nice to actually get that suit during that film. You know what I mean? But
And I have to say that Hot Toys Sideshow did tell me that finally, why I'm the last person to get Endgame Cap, and clearly I'm the last person to get Mysterio. I don't know. My last name's B. Why I'm on the bottom of everyone's list? I've been waiting and waiting. Like, I waited for Cap. It came out in February. I got it last month or 2 months ago or something.
Yeah.
Mysterio's been out how long? I unexpectedly got a shipping notice. So, what am I, Mr. Second Batch Man or whatever?
I don't know. And when did you pre-order that one?
When it was first available.
When it first dropped, you got
first
it
dropped.
in there.
And though I will say this, though, they also told me that my Iron Patriot's going to be shipping in a couple of days, which I was like, oh, that's good, because that was another figure. Yeah, from Sideshow. That was another. I've been dying to get that figure. I want to put my Endgame. Endgame Rocket riding him. I love this figure. And I'm looking forward to getting that, because that Iron Patriot was one of my most eagerly awaited figures. So, it's all very interesting. And another figure they dropped, I just have to point it out, is President Loki. President Loki from the Loki series of the same name is coming out, and just like the third-party Richard E. Grant figure, President Loki does come with crocodile or alligator Loki.
Yeah.
Not a lot of stuff with this figure, but it's still cool. That dropped 2 this week, which I was like, wow, that's cool.
Yo, I mean, yeah, I think with that figure, like, I mean, it's one of those things where it's a mixed bag for me. I mean,
Yeah.
would I get it? Not really. It's going to be a pass for me, and that's mainly because, listen, we're already getting the TVA Loki along with Sylvie. So to have that plus to get that old school, I mean, that throwback suit Richard E. Grant, you know what I mean, is representing with the old school Loki. It just makes more sense to get that over this President Loki, and consider the simple fact they had minimal screen time. Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really matter though, because like I said, it does come with some really very interesting accessories, but nothing that I was going to really jump through hoops for. So it's just a wait. It's a wait on that.
Yeah, me too. Well, on that note, that's our preamble to the show tonight. I had an article I sent you guys. I wanted to read it on the show because I thought it was good. It's not that long of an article. I just wanted to read it and get your take on it because I thought it was something we're always thinking about, we're always talking about on our various shows. So I'm going to read it out loud to the readers. This came from a site I've never read before, Pipeline Artists, and they have this beautiful, I don't think I'd ever seen this picture before, of Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas from Romancing the Stone. This is written by Nicholas Clement, and it was published yesterday, actually the 25th, Thanksgiving. If one thing is certain in Hollywood, change happens slowly, if ever. And change only occurs when absolutely necessary, or if someone is being forced. Pre-COVID, massive disruption was headed in Hollywood's direction over the last few years due to the emergence of the major streaming outlets, led primarily by Netflix and Amazon, with their unlimited checkbooks and stars in their eyes. Chasing Oscar nominations and new subscribers rather than traditional box office revenue, the streamers knew that in order to compete, they had to spend money to develop and then execute a ton of new content. And before that, right around 2008, when Marvel launched Iron Man and kicked off their reign of worldwide blockbuster dominance, the major studios, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, Sony, MGM, and DreamWorks, started to trend away from the middle movie, the sturdy programmers that their entire slates would rely upon to draw in respectable crowds while growing their library of catalog titles. If you're old enough to remember, go searching in your movie memory banks all the way back to the 1980s and 90s, and you'll likely rest upon pleasant remembrances of what it was like to plop down some cash to see a fun movie with big movie stars doing all sorts of exciting stuff up on the big screen. And I'm not talking about the latest superhero product or James Bond's newest adventure or the next Star Wars installment, because while those mega productions afford their own distinct pleasures, there's something to be said about the original idea movie, where someone has concocted a high-concept pitch, which attracted big talent and was then presented to the masses as the next big draw, something like Romancing the Stone or Face Off, to say nothing of A Film for Adults, which, rather than pander to the Academy, existed as just a solid night out at the movies like Fatal Attraction or Seven. So what happened? Where do these stories go? And most crucially, why have our viewing habits changed so much? These things are still getting made. They're just happening at the streamers, getting produced as limited miniseries or a full-blown multiple-season endeavor or as a one-off original feature film. Think about Netflix offerings like The Queen's Gambit and Triple Frontier. In the case of the former, in the 1980s or 90s, if someone had come up with the idea to have a young woman navigating the world of chess through the prism of a period piece, that would have been a 2-hour to 2.5-hour feature-length film. In the case of the latter, a gung-ho, men-on-a-mission actioner with big production values would have been an easy sell in previous decades, but because it's a story that doesn't involve the possibility of a sequel or the convenience of characters wearing spandex outfits, the studios passed on the project, which led Netflix to roll the dice. These are just 2 examples, and regardless of quality, as quality does vary very widely on Netflix and all the other streamers, it demonstrates how their give-me-content business model has allowed these types of films to still find a home. Change was imminent in the industry, even if the studios and old stalwarts were afraid to fully admit it. Over the last 10 years, Netflix and other streaming providers have put a massive dent in theatrical attendance numbers, thus creating this bizarre situation where only the biggest, most expensive films make any sort of cultural impact in terms of in-theater viewings, while nearly all of the prestige items and good old-fashioned programmers have been relegated to minor theatrical releases followed by a VOD platform rollout, thus diminishing the perceived importance of some of these films. The slavish devotion to gargantuan CGI-laden blockbusters on the part of the consumers, many of which have budgets that could supply 20 independent productions with more cash than they'd ever need, is also an area to lay some of the blame. Discernment in choices is rapidly eroding, with many viewers simply tasting the same things repeatedly, and without any sense of conflict about doing so. Cinematic discovery and artistic investigation seem pointless to even suggest in terms of wide populace viewing habits, despite so many offerings constantly finding their way into rotation. You just have to go out and look for quality stuff because it's there, I promise. And that's where the biggest transformation has developed, the attitude of the consumer. Older folks during our age of COVID are simply not ready to return to theaters en masse. If recent box office stats are to be taken as gospel, the recent string of hits, Addams Family 2, Venom 2, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Black Widow, Halloween Kills, have been driven solely by the youth market, while decidedly more grown-up fare like The Last Duel, Last Night in Soho, King Richard, Antlers, Clint Eastwood's Cry Macho, and many others have completely struggled to lure older audiences back to theaters. Even No Time to Die, the final Daniel Craig as James Bond outing, has underperformed at the box office with older moviegoers who seem to be far more comfortable sitting in their living rooms and deciding what to watch next. And that's totally natural and understandable mindset to have right now. A multitude of things have changed so rapidly, especially over the last 2 years, and I'd expect much more to fluctuate throughout the rest of this decade, bringing a much clearer picture of the theatrical experience and the types of offerings we'll still have at our fingertips. It's very possible that the cinematic experience is going to morph into something new and possibly revolutionary. It's going to take brain, skill, innovation, passion, and forward thinking to get us there, and I have no doubt that we can. That article is by Nicholas Clement, and he writes for Arrow Films. We are Cult and Variety magazine. So I asked the two of you for our topic for tonight. Do you miss movies like Fatal Attraction and Romancing the Stone and Seven and Tootsie and all the movies we saw growing up? Because all we're getting at the multiplexes are these gigantic films. And do they still have a place in our society? Or are we just going to stay home for the rest of our lives? What do you guys think?
Well, Robert, clearly I must miss them because I just came from a Comic-Con where I was watching Die Hard from the 1980s. And the
Summer of 88.
Yes, the woman who does the costuming for that show is Marilyn Vance. She did the costuming for Die Hard.
Yes. Yes.
Clearly, yes, she did.
And by the way, she did a we wouldn't know what Eurotrash terrorists look like until she dressed them in Die Hard.
Well, she obviously must have had something to do with their hair too, because I remember in the 80s that was a very popular style for men to wear their hair long like that. And so, yes, we obviously are missing movies like this. And in addition, I purposely stayed till 10 o'clock to watch Die Hard, and I left a little bit earlier than I normally would so I could come and do the show. But if I had, let's say, hypothetically, I thought you would appreciate it, Robert.
And I thank you.
It meant so much to me to see Die Hard tonight that I
You didn't get to see Argyle say, if this is your idea of Christmas, I gotta be here for New Year's.
No, I actually left. I actually left maybe an hour and 20 minutes into the film. However, what I did want to say,
I'm going to be guilt-ridden for this for the rest of my life.
Well, maybe they'll show it again. But it was that important to me. I had to stay and watch the film because it felt like, I wanted to relive that happiness again. And something that I've noticed, or at least I want to have those joyful feelings again when I see these films. It's a holiday movie for me, and I wanted to see it. And if they weren't going to show it, I probably would have watched it, on some other streaming platform. But when am I going to get a chance to see Die Hard in a movie theater setting? So I went to it, and I'm glad I went to it. And before that, I saw another movie, as I told you, that was a Kickstarter film that was very much like, sort of like the goofy comedies that we would see, where they had no reservations, very 80s style kind of approach. It was meant for you to enjoy it. You were not supposed to take this film seriously. And it was just pure entertainment. And that's what audiences are looking for. And it seems like there's a lot of films like that that just aren't being made. So they had to do Kickstarter. That's how they made their film, Robert.
Yeah, I know.
They couldn't get the money from anyone else other than the Kickstarter, and they asked friends and family to help them finish this film. And, I think that those sorts of creative ideas, hopefully Kickstarter will be able to push through films and things like this, but there just aren't enough of them being made that can really satisfy us. And as in the article said, a lot of this stuff is either going directly to Netflix and being turned, rather than a 2.5-hour film like The Queen's Gambit, which I'm glad was not a 2.5-hour film.
Right,
I'm
me
glad
too.
it was not. But normally it would have been a miniseries on TV, on a network program, where many more people would have seen it than, let's say, on a Netflix audience. And the reach of it would have been even stronger, kind of like a Shogun style kind of miniseries or something of that nature. And so what we're seeing is that people still have a desire to see stuff like this. Netflix and these other streaming services are getting lucky with getting nominations and recognition for what they're doing. But overall, people are craving things like this, and they want to have those good feelings inside. And, this formula, this idea that a lot of companies are stepping away from this, I think they're going to, while they're doing that, we're going to see even more Kickstarters, because frankly speaking, Robert, I don't know how many films were made Kickstarter even 10 years ago. I don't think there were very, very many. And I don't even think Indiegogo and Kickstarter had bankrolls of people who were even looking at those
Right.
options to make films or television or even anything else, because the studios almost kind of blocked you from being able to do that for a long time. They had a lot of influence, and they would go out of their way to kind of say, well, we don't really want them encroaching on a lot of our potential, bank. We don't want these independent groups doing that. We already have some independent, and even the independent scene was taken over by, let's say, Weinstein, where he kind of grabbed all those independent films, and he had such massive control over a lot of stuff. And so, once he kind of got on, his empire crumbled for other reasons that shall remain nameless. All of a sudden, now you had a bunch of independent films or people who were interested in that who couldn't get bankrolls. Now they had to find other funding. And then the studio shifting from, the films that we know over to what they feel that if they spend more, they'll make more. And of course, we've seen that that's not always the case. Now that those models are not doing so great, I'm curious as to what's going to happen, Robert, because does it mean that we're all going to start to see movies that are made on our iPhones now? There was a particular panel that you could attend, and they're like, hey, you can make a film on your iPhone. And I'm thinking to myself, is that what they want us to do now? Do they want us to make wholesome, satisfying movies that'll help everybody? And maybe people's fanfics really aren't just fanfics. Maybe they're just going to be precursors to screenplays that'll be made into, something fabulous. And I have a feeling, even at this con, where I saw so many panels about what are you going to do if you're a creator, how to become a professional. You have a great idea, but you don't have any business acumen. Stay here. We're going to show you how to go ahead and take the next step and become somebody who's going to be able to produce their own work. You don't need those big Hollywood studios. You don't need all this stuff. We're going to show you how to do this. You want to be someone who has a presence and is able to actually bring your work into the final production stages. Stick with us. And I think that was a big message today at the con for so many creators. And we're just going to keep seeing more and more of this. Robert, I've never seen so many comic books that have gone through an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter. Have you? This is like unprecedented, Robert.
No, I completely agree with you. The thing about comic book creators is, as the big comic book companies are faltering, and indie comics, you've got people like, Ethan Van Sciver, love him, hate him, or be indifferent to him. The man took his own product directly to the consumer, and he was able to retain, whether you like his politics or not, is immaterial. The fact that I'm interested in what he did is I respect the hell out of him for starting a company, his own company, and taking his comic Cyberfrog, and they made $1 million on crowdfunding.
Yeah. And
you know,
Ethan
and
Van Sciver is a genius. Just like when it comes to being a comic book creator, he's a little different, let's say, than he's just a genius. And he, like many other comic book creators who have incredible style and design in their comics, you know, he clearly has a special quality, and he knew that that would be appealing to people. It did not matter whether it was about a frog or an ant or anything else. His drawings are so beautiful and appealing that he could draw anything, and you know, you're going to be like, wow, this is the most incredible thing I could think of. Your boy Zach, who I think his name is it might be Richard Meyer, who makes the Expendables Go to Hell, and you know, a bunch of other comics as well. He's kind of in that group. Is another example of someone who not only makes incredible comics, Robert, but he actually shares his finances and how to do it, and how much he spent on printing, and you know, what you need to focus on and what you need to do in order to do this. And I think that it's just such a different age now where people are so desirous of this quality of work that honestly we took for granted. We took for granted these great films, these movies, these comics, so much of the stuff that was thrown at us. And we had a golden age at that time that was just glorious. And we've learned from that, at least we've seen from that, how much effort has gone into it, how much was not acknowledged, and how much we've lost. And I'm hoping that we're going to see these creators who have no choice but to go ahead and, you know, put their hand on the wheel and drive their careers in a way they've never had to drive before.
well, I gotta ask Lael. I mean, your lady, she started her own company, Coco Tulip,
Yeah.
which is her own fashion company. Now, I don't know much about the background of it. I don't know where the financing came from or where all that happened. I know you've been helping her out, but
Yeah.
I find it interesting. First of all, I keep it's my favorite. I want a shirt that says Coco. I'll wear it every day on the show. But I'm curious. I mean, you have someone in your life who is an actual starting her own company and a creator of her own. I mean, Coco Tulip, whether it's fashion, that's still an IP. You know, her designs are a brand, and you know, you're watching somebody who's going to be. I'm curious. What are your impressions of somebody who's starting their own? Literally, they're starting their own fashion IP, and they're selling direct to the consumer.
Yeah.
And that, you know, when it comes to movies, I mean, that's one thing. But creators, even in fashion or comics or whatever, if you know your market, we now live in a world where social media and the internet has given us a conduit to sell directly to our consumers, which never existed before.
Yeah. I think, you know, I think the reason why it's great right now, like I said, we're coming out, we're actually living through like a post-pandemic type of situation, and that's going to always be the issue. But I think it's actually forced the hand of creativity, where it's forced individuals now, you know, that before, you know, the pandemic, I think, you know, us as creators, and a lot of people who are creators got lazy because we relied on, you know, others to come up with ideas. Even though we had them, we just basically relied on others to come up with those ideas, and you know, to kind of thrust them out through fruition to get everything started. You know, instead of us, you know, kind of, taking the ball in our own courts, you know, and just trying to do what it is we can, you know, to come up with these things that we've dreamed about for so long. You know what I mean? And you know, for her, it was one of those things where she just decided, you know, that she wanted to just put all her eggs in one basket and do things for herself. You know, she had an idea. It's something that she's always wanted to do. But I think that she got more push from this pandemic to kind of settle in because, like I said, by trade, she's a teacher. You know what I mean? She's worked for an elementary school or for a junior high school for quite some time. But then during the pandemic, she decided that, you know, just for the sake of the kids, herself, her own sanity, because, you know, she came from a situation where the schools weren't really as structured. They had no idea how to handle this pandemic, you know. So because of that, it forced her to say, look, I want to actually look at my passion. There's something that I want to do, and you know, I want to put effort into doing that. It's funded by her and I. You know, we've basically just put everything that we could into this, and you know, it's good to basically have that team camaraderie. This is all her vehicle. This is all her baby. You know what I mean? This is everything that she's actually done, and I'm just here to basically support and make sure that she sees this thing through. And I'm so happy that she's doing it. But I think the same could be said for, like, what I mean, even Hollywood at this point, bro. Like, we're looking at a sense, when you talk about, like, films that we've grown up with, and we've grown up like with Die Hard, Romance in the Stone, Fatal Attraction.
Back to the Future to me is
Back
a
to the
movie that
Future.
even 36 years later, it's a
Yeah.
film that still works. If you haven't, if
Yeah.
it's a movie that any generation you can show Back to the Future, even to the most jaded millennial kid
Yeah.
or Gen Z kid, they'll watch that film because it works.
It works. And that's the thing. Like, when I look at my daughter, like, she's 22 now. Beforehand, she was actually going back watching a lot of films through YouTube because they were there. You know what I mean? So she would actually spend hours going back looking at older films. And you know what? You even find that, like, there are certain theaters now that are, you can actually go to theaters now and they'll have certain days set to where they just show nothing but nostalgic films, like films that, we've grown up with. They sit down, and then on top of that, I think it was also a good way to kind of bring that audience back in the theaters, especially comes, again, post-pandemic. Theaters are trying to get their numbers back, so they're releasing films and bringing people back in the theater to watch it. The problem with, I think, now Hollywood today is the simple fact that, like we've always talked about, they're kind of afraid to take risks. You know what I mean? They're looking at some of these big budgeted films. They're saying, okay, there's a market for this. Everybody, it's like always the next big thing. What's going to happen when comic book films have exhausted their their space? You know what I mean? When
And they
people are
will.
looking for
Eventually they will.
it will, and they will, and that's the thing, is it's going to happen. Like anything that was actually released, like, you remember, we had an era where westerns, films that were in all those films at that time were popular, so people were gravitating towards that. You know what I mean? And that became an important IP. We had some of the crime films that were released. That became basically something that people wanted to gravitate to.
Well, like
telling the
Michael
story of-
Mann's Heat.
Yeah,
Heat was a great
Yeah.
theatrical movie that would never
It
get made
was.
today. Even
Yeah,
if it
it
had
was.
De Niro and Pacino, they'd be like, wait, it's
Yeah.
about a bank robber and a cop
Yeah.
chasing him. People like, what?
Mhm.
And I think another problem is that the whole the reward that studios are chasing, it used to be that if you'd make a mid-level movie that cost
Yeah,
$25-35 million, if you made $100 million,
yeah,
that was a victory.
yeah,
Or if you made $200 million, that was like a blockbuster smash.
yeah.
But now movies, the average studio movie is costing $150 million plus, which
Yeah.
means by definition it has to gross $750 to $1 billion to earn out.
Yeah,
And it's like when you're doing that, and you're making movies now for the entire planet.
yeah,
So by definition, there's only a certain, like, that's why studios aren't making comedies anymore, because they don't
Yeah.
travel worldwide, because comedy is very colloquial.
yeah,
And they're focusing on action films and buddy
Yeah.
cop, like, they can do another Bad Boys movie because people in China get it, people around the world get it. But I
Yeah.
really feel that it's on one hand, globalization. I'm not one of these people that fears globalization. Like, oh my God, we're going to have
Yeah.
the number of the beast stamped in our heads and we're all going to be
Yeah.
part of the global. I don't, but the fact is that the studios, when they change their business paradigm, and
Yeah.
the publicly held corporations that want bigger growth and
Yeah.
bigger profit margins, the studios can't go back. They can't go back and make a $35 million, $50 million movie. And then
Because they-
throw in
You've
50
already
million.
set that expectation. Like, that
Yeah.
expectation has already been set for these big budgeted films. And the thing is I was crushed. Films like Last Duel should get their due. You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
film, cinematically, just the storyline was ingenious. And I think that, something like that, there should be a space. There should be variety. You know what I mean? Yes, we should have our big budgeted films. We have comic book films, which I quite enjoy. But I also enjoy some of, like, the romantic films, like some of the buddy cop films, the dramas, you know what I mean, like the mystery. I enjoy that because I think it actually it completed a circle of entertainment that we're so used to, and that especially somebody people of our age, that we've actually lived through an era where we did get variety. I always talk about the same thing even with music. You know what I mean?
Oh.
There was so much. I remember, like, back in the day, every week there was a new song that was released and it was different from what was released last week.
Yep.
It actually allowed you to go back and listen to the songs last week and appreciate them more because you got more variety.
That's what I loved
Now
about
that
the
we-
'80s, man.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
I would go and I would buy. I could buy a rock album. I could buy a British
Yeah.
synth techno album. I
Yeah.
could buy a Prince record. I could buy a metal record.
Yeah.
And it all existed, and you liked it all the same.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
you
It was
got
appreciation for it.
so much variety of music.
Yeah. And now it's just like everything almost damn near sounds the same. You know what I mean? Like you can always expect everything to sound. And it's like I love that some artists are taking risks and going back, giving us a taste of that nostalgic feel. Not saying that there's no space for what's new, because we always want innovation. We want things that are brand new. We want to see basically this genre, or we want to see basically like IPs be pushed forward. In cinema, I mean, the thing is, I was kind of like, when you hear like some directors talk about, well, the new wave of, the comic book films, and I kind of understood that it's not like they're throwing these films under the bus. They're just saying that, okay, yes, there's a space for it, but there's a space for these films as well. I just think now some of them, the wording has gotten out of, they could have worded it a different way, but I understood what they're basically saying. There's a space for it, but a space that hasn't been allowed. And on top of that, you know what, Rob? Also, I think it is also not just the filmmakers and these companies, but us as film goers to really support these films.
Oh, I
I mean?
agree. I mean, I have to say that. I mean, I hate to say this because I know exactly what these filmmakers are saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I totally I look at my collection of movies, and I would say 75% of them would never get made today.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of my beloved foreign film directors like Andrei Tarkovsky or Fellini or Antonioni, nobody would. Not only would they not get made, nobody would show them.
Yeah.
And neither there would be no audience for them either. No one would go.
Yeah.
Lumpia with a Vengeance, which is a film that I saw tonight, which is from movie to comic book, because they came up with this idea of these filmmakers made a film 15 years ago, and then it progressed in popularity and is now premiered, as I told you tonight, at Comic-Con. That would never be made by a studio, ever.
No. I mean,
but a studio might have taken a chance on it 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They might have picked it up like they picked up, any other directors in that way. But that just doesn't seem to be happening now.
No, and I think what's really interesting is like you look at what the Koreans are doing. We had Squid Game, now we have Hellbound, which Hellbound is if you guys haven't seen Hellbound, it's a 6-part horror series that asks a lot of really, first of all, it's an awesome, if you want to look at it as just a horror series, it's great, but it asks a lot of really interesting questions. I mean, in terms of our belief, it's really, really good. And I feel that like a lot of vibrant Korean cinema, whether it's horror with I Saw the Devil or A Tale of Two Sisters or Train to Busan, those are the movies that we would have made 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I feel that or even David Fincher, he wouldn't get to make Seven today.
Yeah.
And Seven is one of the great, existential horror films of all time.
Of all time.
And it's so beautifully made, and that was standard studio fare at one point.
Yes.
And now, kudos to Lionsgate for making Rian Johnson's Knives Out. Because or they'll make The Hitman's Bodyguard through Grindstone or whatever. I mean, and I do feel that I love comic book movies. I really do. I love the MCU. Hell, I just got my Shang-Chi Steelbook 2 days ago. I love the MCU. I have all that stuff, but at the end of the day, I don't watch those movies over and over again.
Yeah.
The movies I watch over and over again, we joke on this show about, because it's become a joke, but William Friedkin's 1985 To Live and Die in L.A. is a crime thriller where a secret agent, a Secret Service agent, is following a counterfeiter in L.A. And it was made by the director of The Exorcist and The French Connection, and it that would never get made today, even though it would be turned into a miniseries, a 10-episode limited series. And by the way, that movie didn't make any money when it was released. It's awesome,
Yeah.
but it never made any money, even in 1985 when it came out, November 1st?
Yeah.
I mean, the movie's 36 years old this month.
Yeah. I talk about like, you know, I was just thinking like one of my, and people would be surprised to hear me say this, but one of my favorite films of all time that I even put before, you know, as much as I love science fiction, as much as I love comic book films, but one of my favorite films of all time, you know, that I put even before them because of the feel that it gave me when I watched it, and because, you know, I've always loved Clint Eastwood films, was The Outlaw Josie Wells. That film to me is phenomenal.
It's a great movie.
That is what it feels to make a film to me. When you make a film like that, that's the tip of the iceberg for me. It's like a film that I connect well to, and it was like, and it wasn't just because the genre of you know, just like the Western films was really popular back then, but it was the story behind it. You know what I mean? Of, you know, just this character not only turmoil within himself, but just the level of protection that he basically supplied. You know what I mean? But that film was great, and we got so many different films, you know, that were pretty much, I mean, come on, man. Sharky's Machine, bro. Like Sharky's Machine.
Burt, I remember that.
Like straight up, like, you know, when we look at those films, there were so many films that we actually got, you know, that were phenomenal, that were great, bro. Like, I mean, we were, you know, we talk about, you know, in the 80s, the era, you know, of films that we actually got, there were so many, there was variety, bro. And
the diversity in subject matter and
yes. And films in theaters welcomed those films. You know what I mean? It was always a space for them.
If we're going to answer the question about where have all the good movies gone, the fact of the matter is that they aren't being made by the studios, and the studios have a system of how they make a film. Are we going to expect individuals who, with their ambitions and talents, even the most talented individual, be able to make a film that's studio quality on their phone? Do we have that expectation? Is it fair?
Yes, because there are people. Steven Soderbergh has made High Flying Bird, his basketball agent movie, and also Unsane. He made 2 films on his iPhones. Unsane was made on the iPhone 7, and then Tangerine, which is an indie movie about, I don't know if they're transvestites or transsexuals. I don't know. But on Santa Monica Boulevard here in LA. And that film was also made on an iPhone. And the funny thing about it is iPhone 13s with their you can buy lens mounts for them. It doesn't matter what your capture device is. It doesn't matter whether you have a Hollywood crew. It matters anybody who's talented. You still need talent. And people who know how to shoot, I mean, making movies to me is always alchemy, because there's a million things that go into each shot, and they can be betrayed at any turn by people who don't know what they're doing. You know, anybody can pick up a camera and start shooting something if they want, but that doesn't mean they have talent. It's just like anybody can pick up a musician, but or anybody can pick up an instrument, but that doesn't mean your rock band is going to be any good. You know, and I think it's not about, what's interesting is the technology now exists where anybody can make a movie. The problem is making a movie is infinitely difficult. It's really hard to make a film that's good enough for other people to watch. And even when you've made a movie for other people to watch, if it's competent enough, there's 4,000 or 5,000 other movies that are good enough as well. And then you're competing against them to have eyeballs on those movies. And if you want them seen, like, you know, having gone through the process of the last 3 months with our movie Tango Shalom, even that on a very small level was really difficult to get anybody to watch it. And we didn't have an advertising budget. And we didn't have the kind of, we were lucky to have a distributor, but we still, like, we were sending out postcards, you know, please, sir, go see our movie. Yeah. You know, it was, we didn't have the money, and the studios have the whole marketing apparatus. I mean, what bums me out is that, like, I've got a movie I want to make for 35 years. It's pretty out there, to be honest, but it's populist. It's a I would call it a science fiction horror fantasy all rolled into one. That is, It's a kick-ass action film. It's a theological examination of our place in the universe. And it also is a horror movie.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's great. I'd love to direct it. I want to make it for... I walk into a place, a financing company. It's too expensive to make independently. And a studio's not going to make it because they're going to be like, wait, well, this movie's not going to cost $100 million, so we're not going to make it and put the kind of marketing budget. So I have to find a company like Grindstone who will dig my cast. But the problem is it's huge. It's full of special effects. And they'll look at me and go, what do you know about special effects? And I'll be like, well, I know a little bit. And they won't buy off on it. So I'm trying to make a movie that literally nobody will make right now. And it's a dream project. So what do? Abandon the dream? Yeah. Or do you keep pushing forward? I think people would love this movie. I think it would, if I could equate it to anything, it's not like either one of these movies, but the people that like stuff like Buckaroo Banzai or Big Trouble in Little China or Kevin Smith's Dogma, I know that's a wide... They would like this movie, and I think people would go see it. But you have to nowadays. I think another problem is that there's not a lot of diversity of thought. Yeah, where you in 1 week you can watch Ghostbusters, you could watch Amadeus, you could watch The Killing Fields, you could watch Back to the Future, you could watch Desperately Seeking Susan,
you can watch The Crying Game.
The Crying Game, good. That's a good one. All in the same month. And people would go to all of those movies and like them all. That was what the 80s was all about, man. You'd go see these things and people like, what? Show me something new. And people would go and see these things.
Yeah, they would.
And they wouldn't be like, well, I'm not going to go see that. I think my favorite movie of the year so far this year is Lin-Manuel Miranda's Tick, Tick, Boom, which is on Netflix. I was like, wow, an adult movie. What an interesting way to adapt a Broadway show and also make it a biopic. It was so beautifully made and beautifully directed. The music was terrific. Andrew Garfield was great. The whole idea of creativity. I watched this movie. I was sitting there with Elizabeth. I'm like, I kept turning to her going, this is so fucking good.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't seen a movie like this in a long time that I liked. A 2-hour movie that was a movie.
Which I would have loved to see in the cinematic. I would have loved to have seen that in the theater, bro.
I know.
And I would have sat through it.
Had it been 15 years ago, and let's say Lin-Manuel was at the same point in his career then as he is now, it would have been in the cinema. And he would have had many more films produced and distributed at this point. And it's unfortunate that someone with this much talent, and just creativity, he's managed to obviously make films, but they would have been more widespread and had greater advertising and had more impressions across the board so that they, more people would have seen it, not just in the United States, but also internationally.
Yeah, he did like the music for Encanto that just came out this week. I mean, it's the guy is a powerhouse creator and yet, he makes, I think Tick, Tick, Boom, it's his first. He's been credited with other things, but that was not a feature. This was his first feature film. It's so accomplished because he's worked on so many movies. It's so well done. And I look at it and I'm like, it debuted on Netflix. Yeah. Like, kudos to them. But it's like, wow, it's Lin-Manuel Miranda who made Hamilton, one of the most successful Broadway productions in history, and his movie isn't released by a studio. Netflix had to bankroll it and put it on.
Now, let me ask you a question, Rob. Do you think that, such, places or streaming services such as like Hulu, Netflix, Apple, Amazon and stuff like that, do you think that, for instance, like, just remember, like, we went through the same thing that everything that we're experiencing right now with film, we went through with music.
Yep.
Where people would actually go buy, physical copies of, you would actually get a CD or vinyl, which vinyl is back and always here to stay. We already know that, and there's a space for it. But the thing is, do you think, when companies like Napster and companies like, I keep forgetting. There's we have Apple Music,
Spotify, Apple Music,
You know what I mean? Like you have so
Pandora.
many Pandora, exactly. Like you have so many different ones that are out now. SoundCloud, you know, where you can actually just put your stuff up on online for free. We have Dat Piff. We have so many different ones that have now made it more accessible for people independently to put their music up. That now companies are starting to go the same way. Which, you know, we have some artists who are like, you know, we had just, you know, listened to Adele when she was like, listen, I don't want people to just go to one song, you know, because you missed the feel of the story that I'm trying to tell through
Yep.
this actual album. So do you think that with movies and cinema now, that when we have these companies, you know, such as Netflix and all that, that they've made it more comfortable. It's like a lazy way of now watching cinema, that we can watch it from home instead of going to the theater. We can actually stay home now and watch these films, and it doesn't, in my personal opinion, it doesn't give you the same feel of being in the
Dude.
theater and hearing just the quality, seeing it on a big screen. No matter what the genre is, you went because you knew you wanted to see this film. It was a good film, and you were really, really excited about it. And here's the thing: Toya wants to go see No Time to Die. Like, she wants to go see that film. It's something that she still wants to see. We both haven't seen Ghostbusters yet, so we're going to go probably see it this weekend. And I'm, you know, really, really, I want to see this film. I'm not waiting into these films. Like, now, granted, I know that, you know, No Time to Die is now on video on demand. I'm not watching it on video on demand. I want to go to a theater.
You
and I
should
wanna
see it. It's a big screen movie. It's a big screen
You know what I
experience.
mean? And that's the thing. But I think that, you know, Netflix they've made it comfortable for people now to stay home. Disney Plus have made it comfortable. HBO Max, they've made it comfortable for people to want to now stay home. Now, granted, I understand that we are still, you know, dealing with the pandemic, but at the same time, it's like now we have precautions that would allow us to now go to theaters and watch these films. Do you think that they are partially responsible for what we're seeing right now?
Well, okay. Here's what I think has happened. My first year in college, I went to this college in Washington State called the Evergreen State College, and it was in the news in 2017 because of the student uprising there, and Brett Weinstein was run out of the. But when I went there, it was very much a crunchy, chewy, liberal arts granola hippie school. I mean, it was, you could design your own programs. But the first year I was there, I had what was called a coordinated studies program, where I had 3 different professors, and the overall, the name of the program I was in was called The Making of Meaning. And we read a lot of stuff. We read like Bertolt Brecht's The Threepenny Opera, and Bruce Springsteen's 85 box set had come out, so we analyzed that. And what was really interesting, what I took away from that coordinated studies program was that we imbue things with meaning. And when I was growing up, I mean, like when you go to see the symphony, you know, there's a reverence there from the part of the audience. When you're going to go to the symphony, whether here in California you go to the Hollywood Bowl or the Disney Concert Hall to watch a symphony, there is an expectation on the audience's part to bring in with them a reverence for the fact that you're watching 100 musicians playing, and a conductor there, and they're sight reading, and they know and you're listening to virtuoso playing. Now, when I grew up, my grandmother took me to a lot of symphonies when I was a kid. Like, I even asked her after I went on a Beethoven kick when I was in my teens, and I said I really wanted to see the Ninth performed live, and she took me to see Beethoven's Ninth with a 157-piece choral section at the Seattle Symphony. It was fucking amazing. And it, because I had you learn to have a reverence for these things.
Yeah.
I went with Elizabeth to the Hollywood Bowl to hear basically it was a program about women writing symphonic music, and one of our friends had written a piece. And about halfway through, a group of like 20 people came late and sat down, and they were just talking, and they were on their phones, and this was a classical music performance.
Yeah.
I almost got in a fight because I'd shushed some people.
Yeah.
You know, and those people, those assholes,
Yeah.
You know, I've gotten to the point in my life, because I've already been jumped and mugged when I was in Sydney. 4 guys jumped me and beat the shit out of me. So once that happens, I don't have any fear anymore about getting in anyone's face. Yeah. So I was, you know, I turned around and afterwards, after the concert was over, these guys sitting behind me wanted to step up and start some static. And I just stop and I look at them, and you just get quiet and you're like, do you really want to do this?
Do you want to do this?
Over the fact that you were an asshole.
Yeah.
And I told you to shut the fuck up because I came here to hear the music, and you guys are on your phone and you're talking. And I think one of the problems that our society, and the reason I'm going to bring this around, is we no longer revere anything. Like, our society doesn't think anything is special anymore. Yeah. And I think that one of the great things about when you go to the movies or go to a concert or go to the ballet, you actually had to go, first of all, you had to buy tickets in advance. You know, I want to go see my favorite band, or I want to go see this classical concert, or I want to go even an art exhibition or something. You want to go to the Academy, Motion Picture Academy Museum, you have to buy tickets in advance. Yeah. We now live in a society, and I think this is pretty much, I mean, it's happening around the world, but it's very much, America is leading the way in this, in losing respect for culture of any kind.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what it is. We no longer have any reverence for it because nowadays all people care about is what's coming in. They're the center of their own fucking movie. Yeah. Every person now, pick up your phone, you curate the information you want, so you're only getting what you want to come into you, which puts you at the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Where it used to be, you had to go out and the universe was out there, and you wanted to orbit something that was fascinating or amazing. Now everyone thinks that, no, impress me. What do you have that's going to impress me? Yeah. And I think what's part of that, like you go to the movie theater and people, they're not like, you think that when you're sitting in a movie theater and you're watching a film, the lights come down, that one of the great joys of a theater is that there's no distractions. You're in a dark box with people and you're watching this story. But nowadays people walk in, and you used to have to give yourself over to that experience. You had to go to the theater, you had to buy a ticket, you had to sit down in that black box, and when the movie started, you had to put yourself in a mindset where nothing else mattered, and people knew how to do that because they were doing it for 100 years.
You were programmed to do it. Yeah.
Yep. Nowadays, kids cannot do it. They cannot, the pull of their phones or whatever. I mean, they might be Marvel fans, they might be part of a collective experience, but people nowadays don't know how. We are not teaching anyone. No one has reverence for anything. They don't have reverence for their elders, mentors, people that know more than they do. Nobody will give themselves over to anything anymore. They're the center of their own universe. Yeah. The problem with that is we've lived in such an easy society. You know, I was on we're in a position right now, and I don't think people quite understand this, where we have two regimes in the world. You have China on one end that is can't wait to invade Taiwan. Then you have the Russians on the other end of the world, who are they have a troop buildup in the Ukraine. Now you've got Americans, especially American youth, screaming about, we need Marxism. These are kids that have no idea, because they've never lived in a world where they have people defect. They don't know what it means. And then you hear people like, well, you know, Marxism just hasn't been implemented correctly. I'm like, bruh, you kids, do some history research about the 20th century. Yeah. But now we live in a world where we, America, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if you think about it from a tactical standpoint, if you can't beat someone through sheer power, well, what do? You figure out another way. I mean, if you look at what's gone on in this country, it's not just that we all hate each other. The left hates the right. Everyone's screaming about rights and this, that, and the other thing. It's the fact that we don't have any respect
Yeah.
for one another. We don't have any respect for art. We don't have any respect for anything. And movies and music are the things people respect the least. It used to be that music would define a generation. One song, you know, we were all listening, and part of this is because we were listening to the same music. Now it's all fractured and people, but like one song could unite everyone. Now that still happens. You have artists. I mean, God bless Taylor Swift for re-recording her albums to retain control of her work. But in terms of like our society has lost reverence for anything in favor of the navel gazing world that we now live in. It's like, look, man, impress me. You know, give me something that's fantastic. And nobody wants to get out of themselves and take risks or respect the art or whatever. Yeah. And everyone thinks they're equal to everybody else. Like, I love it. I love it when I meet somebody who's knowledgeable in a subject I don't know about. And I don't care if they're breeding orchids like Susan Orlean in the Nicolas Cage movie that, you know, the Charlie Kaufman wrote, the orchid. Well, it wasn't, but she wrote the book. But anyway, what am I? But that's what I mean. And I think that we have lost this. And, you know, you go to places, it's still there in Europe. Yeah. Like when you go to European cities, you go to Florence, people still revere art because they've been human beings for thousands of years longer than we have.
Yeah. Well, Robert, I have to say, there's you make a lot of good points, and I remember about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, on Broadway, and as you know, there's a ton of musicals and plays and stuff that have people who aren't just performers on stage, but perform the live music when you go to a Broadway musical or even in some plays. Yeah. And at some point, they had made a proposal. Someone had made a proposal saying that we could reduce the price of a theater ticket if we don't have live musicians anymore. And as you can imagine, you know, this is something that was fought against very, you know, hard to prevent anybody from being able to say that when you buy a theater ticket in New York City, that the music must be performed by live musicians. After all, a lot of times you're paying $100, $200 for one of these tickets. And the last thing you would want is for someone to be singing off of recorded music. You want that live experience from the performance on stage and from an orchestra or any sort of bands off stage. So, you know, that was something that they fought against and won. And now it's like a rule that every show has to have these live performers who are part of the union there as well, and that they must always have live performers doing the music. Now, if they felt that they were okay to do something like that, you know, I think that it shows that they just didn't care about the quality of the overall performance. After all, you want to have quality performers playing the music in a musical. Why would you want to have recorded music? But now what I've noticed is that when you can go to some live shows, the music is recorded. It's not entirely live, you know, instrumentalists. And so, you know, there's kind of like been this shift over the years where a lot of these live performances will have certain sections where it is recorded and you're not actually listening to a live musician. You're perhaps the singer is an actual live musician, and sometimes not even them. You know, so I think that is kind of ruined and kind of taken the shine away from going to a live performance for a lot of people. But, you know, kind of like getting back to our question about where have all the good movies gone, the good movies that we've grown accustomed to, knowing that the studios aren't making them, can these other companies and individuals keep up with the level and the amount of movies that we received in you know, I mean, have they been doing that, in your opinion? Do you think that they've been keeping up with what we know to be sort of enough creative product? Because you and I already know that there are tons of scripts of fantastic stories that have yet to be told, that are not going into production by the studios and need studio development. They would need a studio to create a science fiction fantasy movie. An ordinary person may not be able to sort of do that on their own, right? If it's a story about one or two people or about a romance, you could possibly do that film. But for a larger production, it will take more money and more time and perhaps may not be able to be accomplished by an individual. So do you think that they've been keeping, let's say, whoever is producing films out, whether independently or not, have they been able to keep up to the level of these good films, the amount and quality of good films that we're accustomed to? I'm not quite sure that this is what's been happening. And I think that this is why this question has come up by this author. And, one of the things that, we have to ask ourselves is, I don't believe that we have such extraordinary expectations when it comes to entertainment. I believe that if we were able to produce that quantity, now that we have discovered even more creators, we should be producing even more work, in my opinion.
Look, I would think so, but actually the answer is simple. The studios that are now held by larger publicly held corporations have to produce a certain amount of profit every year. And the level of profit and how much movies have to make to achieve that, the studios, they have to spend, first of all, they're making movies for the global marketplace now. And it used to be that the foreign release for a film accounted for 25% of the box office. In the case of a James Bond movie, for instance, domestic, I'm talking U.S., even though they're considered British productions, the U.S. might only gross 25% of a James Bond movie's entire gross worldwide. So the whole economics and the whole business has changed. Mm-hmm. And the movies that the studios can make are no longer stories, they're spectacle by design. And there's nothing the studios can do to change it. The economics don't work. If you were to make, I would be like, well, I'll give you an example. So when I produced a movie called The Hills Run Red that Dave Parker, who's the host with me on Midnight Metal tomorrow, directed, we were working for Joel Silver, who produced Die Hard. He was our executive producer, and at his company, they had a deal to make 10 direct-to-video genre movies. Mm-hmm. Our movie, The Hills Run Red, was the second of those films. Our budget was $4 million. They probably took $1 million off the top, so we made it for $3 million. We shot it in Bulgaria. And based on the home video rights and the cable rights, they knew the movie would make about $20 million. Mm-hmm. So after everyone took, that's not bad. Ultimately you're making a 300% profit. Actually, probably not. Let's cut that in half. Let's make it 150% profit because you have to pay for the studio overhead or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, after our movie, they were prepping a movie called Cheerleaders in Trouble. It's an exploitation film, probably a lot of fun. They just decided, nah, we're not going to do this anymore. Why should we make movies for $4 million that are only going to gross 20? When we can make movies that cost $100 million that might gross $500 million. Mm-hmm. And I would say, well, it's still profitable. And we're the farm league and you promote from within. Who's going to make movies for you in 20 years? Yeah. My first ongoing job was at Warner Brothers, and the boss of me was a guy named Bill Young, who was the head of feature production at Warner Brothers. And he hired 3 young guys. I was 22, came off my first movie, got my first job. I'm working for the senior vice president of production at Warner Brothers. I'm 22 years old. I had my own parking space, went on the Warner lot. I was in the executive building. I met everyone. I met Clint Eastwood. I met everyone at Warner Brothers. But the whole point is that we were excited young people, that we were learning the studio system, and I was happy I was a glorified gopher, a runner, whatever. But I was happy to be there, and the point is that Bill was teaching us how does a movie get made at a studio so we could then go out into the world and bring that knowledge, hopefully, back to Warner Brothers. In my case, it took me 20 years to come back and bring a film to Warner Brothers, but I did that. But the point being is that you have to learn somewhere. And you would think that the studios, it was so weird to me that here was a program that was profitable. that didn't cost them a lot of money, but it just didn't make gigantic money. I'm like, look, if you make a $4 million movie and it makes a $10 million profit, that's pretty good. Even if it made a $5 million profit, pretty good. Yeah. That's really good. And if you do that 10 times over the course of a couple of years, what you're doing is then you're newly minting talent, and then you make the movies with all of that is out the window. All of it's gone in our country. All anybody wants is to hit a home run all the time with everything, whether it's music, movies, Broadway, whatever. We have to hit a home run every single time. And I always thought that I lived in a world where, hey, getting on base was good.
Yeah.
Like, you get on base, we're gonna make some money, and if I have to hit a sacrifice fly to get a run to come in, great, that's what I do too. But now we don't live in that world. We live in a world where it's got to be a home run every single time.
So let me ask you a
go ahead.
question. So I was interested in something that you just now said, to whereas I would equate that to now the benchmark is that every film has to make $1 billion.
Yep.
Every film has to be a $1 billion film. This is basically they feel as though to achieve and to succeed, it has to be $1 billion film. And if it falls below that, then it's not labeled successful. If you make if your film makes $400 or $500 million, to me, that's more money than I've actually ever seen. But the thing is, it's like, okay, $500 million, I would deem as a successful, game, for films. But nowadays, the benchmark is $1 billion. So now you have studios that are striving to reach that $1 billion mark, and they basically only feel that they can get that turnaround through these big budgeted spectacles. You know what I mean? Like, they feel as though there's only a space for that because we want that money. We want to eat just like these other studios are eating. So, oh yeah, your idea is great, this, that, and the third, but is it going to make us, or is it going to give us that turnaround? Oh no. Okay, we have to put you in the back burner. We need this big budget film first. We'll put this whole slate first. Let them make that money. Let them make the studio, and then we'll get back to you. That is pretty much, in my opinion, a part of the problem. What do you think?
I completely agree. And what's really interesting is if you think about the profits that are being made. For instance, God, what movie was it? Oh, it was Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody that a buddy of mine directed. But that movie cost $65 million.
Yeah.
One of the writers of the film is suing the studio or the production, Graham King's production company. The movie made $900 million.
Yeah.
On a 65 spend. Let's say you doubled. Let's just for marketing everything. Let's just say it cost $200 million all in, even though it didn't. $200 million all in. Well, that's including marketing. So the conventional wisdom used to be a movie had to make 3 times its budget to earn out. Because remember, when you see the box office grosses, the studio doesn't get all of that. They get they get 55% of that. So if a movie makes, $1 at a dollar in box office, the studio only gets 55 cents of it. Mm-hmm. So it's not as much money as people think, but still, if you made a movie for like The Joker, Todd Phillips' The Joker cost like $65 million. It made $1 billion. It has to be one of the most successful studio movies ever if you look at a percentage.
Yeah.
But I think what to me is like, it's all exponential. If you're going to spend $150 million, you want to make $1 billion. But of that $1 billion, how much do you really get back? Like, how much profit do you make? Do you make $100 million in profit? Because you've spent $150 million, that's a lot of money. But now, what if you make a movie for $35 million and it grosses $300 million?
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Exactly.
So it's on a sliding scale. So this idea that, and the studios are thinking that, okay, well, we have to spend $150 or $200 million because we have to appeal to the world now. Well, what if you only spent $35 million and you made $200 to $300 million domestic?
Yeah.
What about going for that?
Exactly.
Well, they don't even know. They don't even know what that means. They can't even. They can't even equate.
They can't see that.
And like we now have Netflix is now making a $200 million Martin Scorsese movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, historical epic. Why it costs that much, I don't know. The metrics on that, I don't even understand how it works because it's all about subscription. So for Netflix, it's like if you make a great movie like The Queen's Gambit, you can't, and how many views did that get? Or the fact that you bought Squid Game, the most watched, it cost you $21 million or something. Now you got Squid Game, it's the most watched thing on your platform. Now you're going to spend $200 million on a Martin Scorsese movie?
Yeah.
Which
how does that? Yeah.
I mean,
Because you've already proven that like something that has such a small budget can be successful. You know what I mean? Like it's right there. The numbers are there. Like people gravitate to it because the story itself is so enticing.
Well, that's the whole thing. Nothing has changed about movies, music, plays.
Yeah.
They all have to be good. The audience doesn't give a fuck how much it costs to make.
You're right.
The fact is,
right.
people who are watching this show right now, or this is the thing that's freaked me out about YouTube. It put the zap on me. My whole life I thought, God, I just want to make movies.
Yeah.
And movies are 90 minutes to 2 hours of time. Tango Shalom, and I'll say it, fakakta little indie movie I worked on for 5 years on and off, is 115 minutes long. Most of the streams I do on this channel, certainly this show, is longer than that. So I ask you, now Tango Shalom is going to be seen by a lot more people, but it's still the same 2 hours of time. So I ask you, is it more entertaining to watch Tango Shalom, or is it more entertaining to watch this show? If you have 2 hours of time, what would you rather watch and what feels more fulfilling to you? I would love to think that, I hope Tango Shalom would be because it took so goddamn long to make, and there's a lot more skills from all kinds of different people to go in to make that 2 hour experience. But really, at the end of the day, it's 2 hours of your entertainment life.
Yeah.
What are you willing, like today I clicked on, for whatever reason, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just going to watch the beginning. Elizabeth came out of the bathroom, sits down, and she starts watching. She goes, I haven't seen this in forever. And we watch the whole movie.
Yeah.
Now, I just got the, just got the Mad Max anthology with all the movies in 4K. The sound's all fucked up, so I had to wait. And I'm sure I was watching the fucked up sound, but I wasn't listening to it in the surround sound system, so I'm like, whatever. And we enjoyed it. And I'm like, that was 2 hours, And the question is, how do you want to spend your time? I think people are going to YouTube and watching people speak because they're getting more of a connection.
Yeah.
Watching other people that they like talking about things they like rather than going to a movie and not connecting with it in the same 2 hour period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting, bro. Like when I hear people say, I'm grabbing popcorn, sitting back, and I'm watching you guys speak, or I'm watching like just my favorite YouTuber, stuff like that. Like I'm like, wow, like it's become the new. I didn't realize how much of a space that has been created here, and I just wish that same space could, reinvigorate itself in the cinematic world. You know what I mean? And the thing is, I think everything has a space, from the big budgeted film, $1 billion film, to like even films that were made for like maybe less than $1 million. You know what I mean? Or films that were just made. Look, if you're going to basically create a film on your phone, that's fine. Just have a great story, a great narrative. And if it's done well, I'll basically watch it. But the thing is, Rob, to be quite honest, we live in a space, bro, where people now, like, all right, I'd equate this to making, like, to music. And I always do it because, like I said, I'm a musician myself and I love music. But creating an album, recording an album, mixing an album from home, as much as I say, okay, it is afforded an opportunity for you to be as creative, I would prefer to do it in the studio. Why? Is because it opens that space for improvement and for people to tell you how things can improve. And it opens the space for ideas. When you're home surrounded by a box, yourself, and you're creating this and saying, you know what, this is going to be the next hit. I'm doing this on my own, this, and the third, whatever. You're not opening yourself up to ideas for other people to hear it. You might create that music or create that album, that song, that single. And then if you have a listening party, somebody might be like, well, it would have been nice if you could have done this. people nowadays aren't open to the actual, they're not open to ways and other people telling you how things could be improved. The same way can be for film. Like, people are stuck in their own box and they're one tracked. Like, that's the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems, like, that I see. And it's I don't know, man. It's a sad space, and I just hope that we can see a return. I really do.
Well, I would say, let me ask you this. I mean,
Yes.
you are a huge fan and a huge supporter of tango in New York City.
Yes.
You know, you took people and for independent movies to have any kind of loyal support of any kind is really important at the grassroots level, because, you know, when you make music or movies or whatever, or write a play, you're doing it for an audience. And we were afforded an opportunity to have the movie open in theaters in New York City, and if people didn't come, you know, and we had no advertising budget, so anybody that would help us was greatly appreciated. So thank you for that. But here's the thing. Even our society now, no one is looking for Tango Shalom. They're looking for, I mean, like, we opened in theaters with Shang-Chi. And even though on my Facebook page, I here in LA, I went and saw it at this theater at the Lemley, one of the great art house theaters. I mean, the Landmark in LA, great art house theater. And I'm looking at the marquee, and there was Tango Shalom and Shang-Chi together, and I couldn't believe it. So I took a picture. And
we don't really know whether no one was looking for Tango Shalom. And I'm just going to be honest, Robert. You know, I think that people are looking for fresh, intelligent, you know, joyful films. And, you know, if that's what people are looking for, something that has some soul to it, something that has meaning to it, then they are looking for films like that. And let's say in a different time and place, Robert, if you had $1 million for an advertising budget, we could never know how far and how vast the reach of Tango Shalom was. So I just do want to say that in a sense of, you know, I understand what you're talking about, and you've done such an excellent job, and everybody who worked on the film has done such an excellent job. But
Phenomenal.
Let's just be truthful, is that if you had a different budget to advertise it,
you
know, I think both you and I would agree that the film would have gone farther, and that, you know, I think that more people, and I think eventually they will.
Yeah, I mean, when you, I'm really, it's funny because the computer I'm talking to you now on was, the movie was finished in right here, you know, where I'm sitting right now. It was on the same, and that's another thing, is that Dota Dragon's Blood, done right here. By the way, season 2 starting in January. Tango Shalom, done right here. Crisis Medicine, the 50-hour medical it was all done here in this room where I'm sitting. You know, and I think people have this idea that whether it's I have to tell you, I think everybody should please watch Peter Jackson's new documentary, Get Back.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, even if you love the Beatles or don't love the Beatles, as an examination of the creative process, it is absolutely, its value is beyond measure. Not just because it's about the Beatles, but the fact that it exists at all, and watching the creative struggles and the friendship, it gives you a whole different picture of what you might have thought. It's amazing to watch, and it gives an insight to people to just how much work is involved in doing all this. I think nowadays people have completely forgotten. You know, they listen to music, they don't realize people could have slaved away in a studio for 6 months. You know, recording a record.
Yes, and this is why Metallica released an album that has 53 tracks on it with, you know, demos and all that sort of stuff on it to reinvigorate, in their opinion, the music industry, in the sense to give people an idea of what exactly is going on behind the scenes, because we haven't been seeing a lot of that production occurring, and so they decided that they were going to collaborate with different types of bands, different artists, and then just even include stuff, that they haven't even finished yet, that wasn't even complete. And the idea of that for people to be exposed to what is going on behind the scenes. And I think that that's a really good direction to go in, because as you know, artists get inspired by other artists. And, that's going to, kind of make people understand what goes into this. And you're absolutely right about that special with the Beatles. And we get to see, their kind of conversations with one another and the interaction and what goes on in there. And
it's like you were there. It's incredible.
It is incredible. And perhaps, as we see, like let's say at the Comic-Con, we're seeing more and more of these, panels where they're trying to inspire people to go in different directions that they weren't going in before, or, create a business plan, or even, like the idea of what does it mean? What exactly are you trying to create as a creator? And are you going in the right path? I heard someone say today that it's better to write a book first and then do a screenplay versus writing a screenplay and then trying to write a book. Now, I don't remember all the dimensions as to why this particular panelist suggested that. But I think that even the idea of even talking about a suggestion where they're trying to get creatives to find their groove and their space and where they belong in this system, that has become more complicated as Hollywood has kind of like exploded into something we don't even recognize anymore.
No, it's true.
You now have to promote yourself as an individual producer, director, screenplay writer, whatever it is, actor, sometimes all of those items, all of those. We're seeing more and more people do all of these functions than ever before now. And, that used to be something that was kind of frowned upon, like someone starring, directing, producing, mixing their own, like that would be something that really wasn't encouraged so much because of the amount of commitment that it required.
Well, I have to say that one of I found this particularly uplifting. I'm old, but I found this uplifting. Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas.
Yes.
Rolling Stone made a video with them explaining how they made their hit Bad Girl, which I think is a great pop single. She's a bad girl, do 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 do, and it shows they recorded it in their house.
Yeah,
like the two of them are sitting there recording this song, and they're incredibly talented. They're classically trained musicians. They're in the course. I mean, they. I have the utmost respect for Phineas and Billie Eilish, because they're the real deal, and they were trained from a very young age. I mean, the fact that they produce, they play together. But when you watch this little bit, it's like Rolling Stone presents Bad Girl. Just look it up, and it's a video that explains. And you look at them, and you're like. And when you watch where they were recording, and how they were recording, but it was unfettered creativity from the sibling team that grew up from the time they were little kids because their parents gave them the opportunity.
That space to learn. It was incredible. By the way, I have to. There's been super chats coming in, and I've been remiss. We've been talking. This is a great conversation. This is the best. Lizzie Venus says. Rob, have you heard the new Exodus album? Now let me just show the Exodus album cover. Persona non grata. Now this is some fucking metal. Like if you want to know Exodus, I have to say Lizzie, I'm going to be honest with you. Lizzie says Persona non grata, it's incredible. Also, I'm going to the Bay Strikes Back tomorrow at the Fox in Oakland. From what I know of Exodus, which admittedly isn't much, they are it's thrash metal. Not necessarily my genre. I know it has a tie to Slayer. Like one of the guys is in Slayer, but I gotta say, look at this album cover. This is midnight metal, and oh my god, come on now, who doesn't love that? So great comic art, but thank you, Lizzie, for that. And Sonny Dominguez sends in a tip and says, "Hi, great meeting you. The con felt a lot smaller than in scale and people, but it made the experience very enjoyable. Might head down again tomorrow. Check out the comic book Dose by John Gabia in Artist Alley and Just Scope booth." See, that's cool. That's what's great about Comic-Con is you can find that stuff.
Well, he knows I like different. I like extraordinarily different. How should I say? Adult comics. I like things that are alternative, have high sexual content in
Omaha the
them.
Cat Dancer. You got to go back in and get those.
I do tend to enjoy comics like that have that sort of undertone to them. So
Nice. I too like that. Ron C says William Friedkin never set out to make a horror film. William Friedkin used the mystery of faith of a sick little girl to guide him. Rob, what are your thoughts? Well, okay. I mean, William Peter Blatty had written the novel The Exorcist. He was a Jesuit. He had gone to Georgetown University. And I think that I think the funny thing about a lot of these directors' approaches, and Friedkin was absolutely right, that horror movies have a connotation to them. Like they have certain tropes. And I think when William Friedkin approached The Exorcist, he did, as a documentary filmmaker, he asked himself, okay, what if this were real? What if all this were real and it was taking place in the quote unquote the real world? And like in the book, I have to present this as if it's actually happening. It is not a horror film. This is something that actually occurred. I mean, it didn't, but we have to approach it like it did.
Yeah.
And that's why, I mean, The Exorcist is my favorite horror film of all time. We've talked about it on the show. And I think the reason it works is because of his approach. If he thought, I'm making a horror movie, man, it never would have worked.
Yeah.
The fact is, he was making a drama about a priest who lost his faith in God and a mother whose daughter was in distress and she couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And if you said, well, I'm making a horror film, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
I think that's what the brilliance of that movie is.
And there are so many stories in real life that have not been told, and I think that we're going to be seeing so many more horror films of that nature coming out. And horror has continually managed to be in the top 15 top grossing films of the year continually.
And another thing about horror is it's what I love over the last 20 years. The biggest audience for horror has been women. They were an untapped, and people have been surprised by that. And I'm like, I always thought, why is that surprising? Women know horror far more than men do. I mean, the way women are treated their whole lives. I mean, it's the same thing whether Lael. I mean, if you're African American in the United States, there's things. I mean, what is a horror movie? When I saw Get Out, I loved Get Out. I was like, wow, here's. Jordan Peele really brought social commentary, but in the context where you can't, like, I as a white person didn't feel offended watching Get Out. I'm like, this is great. I love this. Yeah. And I thought, like, you can use horror as the genre to deliver a social message without seeing so preachy, because it's fun and it's horrific.
And he also included a director's commentary on his when you buy his films. At least when someone bought it for me, there's a director's commentary, and of course there's an alternative ending. But I'm glad he had the director's commentary on there, because there were some things that I watched, and of course he explained what he was trying to do, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I didn't know that. I interpreted the film a little differently, but he certainly got his point across.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, if you want to make a movie about monsters, I think the great thing to me about the horror genre is I've always thought of horror as not about the fear of death or being destroyed by a monster or something. To me, the great horror is to have to live another day, and get up in the morning and find your humanity and persevere through an uncaring universe. And how do we do that? I mean, I think the great horror of human existence is finally realizing it is finite. We're kids, we think we're going to live forever. We have no sense of our impending doom. And then you work through your life, and you have disappointments, and you have joys, and you have all these things, and you get to a point in your life where you're like, oh, oblivion is coming. There's nothing I can do about it. And you're living in a physical body that is deteriorating around you, and it's, I actually find it poetic and beautiful, so I don't have a problem with it. But that idea, that's the true horror. Is, we work so hard, we strive so hard, we make a great life for ourselves, or we get where we want to go, and then time will take it all away from you.
Yeah.
And that's the basis of all horror. It's just that sometimes monsters will speed that up. You might have thought you were going to be a good father or write your great symphony or your great novel, but oh no, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the werewolf tore your throat out, and now you're dead.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think that it's when we speak of films like Get Out, he has another film dropping, or I don't know when it's coming, but it's called Nope.
I don't even
know what the plot is.
No one knows what it's about.
When I saw the poster, I'm like, whoa, like it looks phenomenal. And I know it's going to have certain undertones, and it's the beauty of it is that he's allowed a space to tell his story, to tell these particular story, these films, using like the horror or science fiction aspects, just as just the icing to pretty much entice. But I love the simple fact that it does have some really, really good storytelling and things that speak to modern times, speak to historical events, speak to certain things, and how society has evolved, and whether it's right or wrong. But I like the simple fact that even him as a director, someone who's come from comedy, we've seen that he's actually coming to his own.
Liam Neeson's.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, their sketch comedy was genius.
Ingenious, bro. Like, that's what I'm saying. So, like, to have a space to tell these stories, it's phenomenal, and I can't wait for that film. Like, I don't know what it's about, but just once I have, to the point that he's developed a space that we have the confidence that he's going to tell a really good story. So
yep.
I'm so excited about it.
Stubble McShave says stagecraft technology is great in many ways, but does the pre-constructed effects limit the happy mistakes that may happen on a movie set because they're too locked into certain events happening? Yes. I would say yes, because it is very technical, and it look, as much as I love the stagecraft technology, you can tell when they use it, as good as it is.
Yeah.
And the fact is, you're dealing with backgrounds, and everything is predetermined by definition, by design.
Yeah.
And however, I mean, I think when you're using it, we can't go to Tunisia anymore. So they're shooting The Mandalorian in a studio in Manhattan Beach, yes. And it looks like Tunisia. And it's fine for that. You color time it, you make it look great. But in terms of happy accidents, like, you can't have actors come on set and go, let's figure out how we're going to block this scene and decide, let's change it. Let's walk over here. And you're like, we didn't shoot that background. So
there's a scene in The Mandalorian season 2. I can't remember which episode. It might be 1 or 2, where Grogu and Mandalorian Din Djarin are knocked off of a speeder bike. And after Din Djarin manages to outwit the baddies, Grogu's character runs to the Mandalorian, and they use CGI for it. And you can tell, like, it's not the same quality. They actually had, Puppet Master go ahead and make him walk manually. It would have been more satisfying to see that than to see him CGI run, because it looked so unnatural. It's not what we know. I mean, they purposefully used many more shots of the puppet than to use CGI because they weren't as happy, or let's say didn't want to recreate some of the not so successful looks for Yoda,
right,
in some of the other films. And so they wanted to stick more with a puppet, but in that one scene, it doesn't look natural because it just isn't. Whoever created it, I'm not slamming them for that, but it is noticeable.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it is, CGI, and it's a hard thing What's really interesting is I think one of the, and you notice it in the Phantom Menace where Yoda was a puppet, but not the right. It
Yeah.
didn't look quite right. I mean, it doesn't look like the Yoda from Empire Strikes Back. And then they went, CG, and it looked better because they could make it look more realistic. But it's all about, if you're first of all, if you're asking a character like Grogu to walk across the floor, we've never seen Grogu. Like, we always seen Grogu in his pram or whatever, people holding him. But it's like when you watch. Look, as much as I think this is badass, I don't think anyone. You can say what you want about Attack of the Clones, but when Yoda takes on Count Dooku, that shit was dope. Like, come on, he's like a whirling dervish, and it never occurred. I loved it. I was like, yes, fucking Yoda, and I'm like, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Because when they had him walk out, and he reaches and I mean, I have to say, I have a lot more. I have a lot more love for Attack of the Clones than most people. Everyone talks about how bad Attack of the Clones is. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, what? When Yoda walks out and he kind of like, and then he pulls open his cape and uses the Force to grab his lightsaber, and I'm like, okay, I'll buy that. Yeah. But now Grogu's too little. He's too you can't. It's almost impossible to make him just take a walk across the room, especially it was too hard to do.
Yeah,
and so it's not going to look right because they haven't figured out. What would a creature that's that small what would he look like? What's his anatomy like? Like, no one knows. So it can only look goofy.
Yeah. It was, like I said, the choice. I guess it was the choice behind it. It would have been easier if you had Din Djarin just go grab him. Just grab him and pick him up.
Yes.
It would have just been easier. You wouldn't have to actually see, there wouldn't have been much of a struggle, but I guess they just, I guess they were more so trying to give Grogu more character. But I mean, at the same time, the choice is, there's certain things that you could have actually. I mean, if you have him walking just like a couple inches, then that's fine. But you have him clearly walking like 6 feet across from him. Yeah, it doesn't, it doesn't gel well, especially when there's that much lighting on the character. You're going to see a lot of flaws, and you'll see that the CGI doesn't kind of match up well. Even though it's entertaining, you can actually say it's extremely entertaining. And of course, it's an adorable character, but still, there's other choices, other ways that they could have actually gotten their point across with that scene. Yeah,
but it's all it comes on to anything. When you're applying visual effects, it's the way they're being used. And I think that one of the great problems now is that the visual effects are so far removed from, say, the director. I mean, the directors do get involved. But now, like Marvel movies, they previs all this stuff beforehand, and when you have visual effects guys planning this stuff, they're not thinking it's not going to look real. They're like, yeah, of course we'll have Grogu walk across the stage. Why not? It's CG, and you're like, well, it doesn't work. And the thing is, you need a great director like a David Fincher will already know this and go, no, this isn't going to work. We got to let's refigure out this scene. And that's what was great about previs. The problem, though, is there's not a lot of directors that are working in Hollywood that are strong enough to know what they're looking at. They don't know to be like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
They don't know because they're so reliant on previs, and even the studios. It's all a collaborative effort now, so you're not going to have any auteurist vision on Star Wars anymore. No one's ever going to let you do that again.
Yeah. Well, Robert, earlier this week you did a fantastic interview with Danny Trejo. Is he 79 now?
Yeah, 70. I think 78, 79. Yeah, and that was incredible. He was incredible.
It was an incredible interview, and of course, I listened to it and learned quite a lot. It turns out that Danny Trejo was in the film that I saw tonight. He played one of the baddies in the film.
No,
and yes, yeah, he did.
Really?
But it was an action comedy, so he does these sorts of films, and it was great to see him in that. And the other thing I wanted to tell you was Chris Gore is on a few panels here as well. And quite a few of them have to do with documentaries that you you should see, and different things like that. So I found that very interesting because I kind of feel like what we are doing is like a documentary style or entertainment documentary on some of the films that we enjoy. And I know you go on other panels too, you too, Lael, where you both review different things, and it's like a documentary style for some of these films that we're looking at. But I thought it was interesting that they felt that they were going to do a panel on documentaries in this format that we do on YouTube. So that was also very interesting. And there's a Star Trek panel as well, and it's about the future of Star Trek. And for some reason, I thought I would see your name on there, because if anybody's going to talk about the future of Star Trek, it would have to be Robert Meyer Burnett, right?
Well, it's funny. There is a big Star Trek exhibit at the Skirball Center here in Los Angeles, where they have like the original model of the Enterprise D from Next Generation that I'm actually in, which I'm sure a lot of people aren't happy about. But I recorded this years ago, and it's been traveling. It used to be up in Seattle at the Experience Music Project. But the problem is, I think what's interesting is I used to be seen as a Star Trek expert. I was actually paid in the 90s, Viacom. I was hired by Viacom, CBS Viacom, I was a paid Star Trek consultant. Like, I actually was a paid Star Trek consultant for the studio that owned Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And then I worked on the Star Trek Experience in Vegas for Paramount for 2 years. And then I worked for CBS making documentaries about Star Trek The Next Generation and Enterprise for 3 years. So in my life, I've actually been paid by CBS or Paramount for 6 years to be a Star Trek expert. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how many people in life can say that, but it's true. And so now, of course, my feelings for modern Star Trek are less than favorable.
Yeah. Now, Rob, do you think, and that's what I wanted to, I'm glad you just said that, because do you think that your faith can be restored if there is a good film, a film that comes along that's really, okay, so how did you feel about the fact that at one point we almost got a Quentin Tarantino Star Trek film? How did you feel about that?
Well, here's what I find interesting. Mm-hmm. I would love to see, I believe that I would much rather see an auteurist vision about the Star Trek franchise, because Quentin Tarantino would give us something interesting and uniquely his. Now, as someone who's a fan of, and has read Star Trek novels his whole life, those authors were all auteurist visionaries in their own right. And there's a wide swath of different Star Trek novels that I really like, that people would think like, wait, what? There's literally an early Star Trek novel that was in the early 80s called Black Fire, where Spock basically becomes a space pirate to figure out, and but it was good. It was really good. And the people that would write these stories, like Quentin Tarantino loves Star Trek, so I think what we would get from him would be interesting. Like, I am not some Star Wars iconoclast or Star Trek iconoclast that believes in one thing. I mean, I'm like, I'm all about looking like I wrote a Tumblr post that people remind me of like 5 years ago, where I said, you know what I think should happen with Star Trek is they should reboot the whole thing. Like, and not do it where, like in J.J. Abrams' case, he's like, well, this is an alternate universe, but the other universe, and tied it. No. Go back to the beginning. You've got your Star Trek universe. Now start over. Start over and reinvent. Keep all the tropes, but start it from scratch, and do something really new. Because what I feel is frustrating is that the Star Trek that exists is being like Spock, for instance. These new producers, they didn't create Spock, they didn't own Spock, they have no, and yet they take that character and their show that's set in a canonical time period, it's a prequel, and they saddle him with a learning disability. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but Spock doesn't have a learning disability. And they're like, oh, no, now he does. And I'm like, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
And you're missing the point of what Spock is as a character. And the idea that they're giving him a learning disability is specifically designed because, well, our audience has learning disabilities, and we want to make Spock more palatable and relatable to our audience. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Spock is a person of two worlds. He's torn between being a Vulcan and being a human. People identify with his plight.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily an actual learning disability where he's dyslexic or something. They don't want that. What you're doing is you're diminishing the character in a false belief that you have to appeal to your audience in that way. Spock is already a character people have loved since 1966. The idea that you're going to come along now and saddle a character that's 55 years old and give him a learning disability, this is the problem with the modern age. They don't understand that Spock was already a character that people with learning disabilities sympathized with.
Yeah.
And so it bothers me.
Because you can almost say that, like with Spock, even the Spock that we've actually seen over time, people who, even struggle with the level of autism, can identify with Spock because of just his palate, like, his level of intelligence, but also his struggle with emotion. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't have to have an additive. You didn't have to add anything.
Dude,
onto
totally.
That character.
Oh my God. See, you so get it.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the problem, I think, is like they're attempting. The thing is like they're so, they're thrusted into this world where now people have to really, really dissect the human condition and cover every aspect of it in order to make the, just to make the audience more susceptible or, accepting of it, instead of just letting the character play out and letting people draw their own conclusions.
Well,
You know what I mean?
dude, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is now they figure that we need to make characters that directly appeal to the audience. Like, give them a learning disability because so many people have learning disabilities. Well, look, the point is that audience members, I don't think, need to see themselves reflected in characters. They can see aspects of themselves reflected in characters, but not direct. Like, I've always said to people, I said, one of the things that I honestly believe is that the great stories are what I like to call what-if stories. And when I say what if, I mean, what if I, meaning the audience member, what if I was the protagonist of this story? What would I do? Pick your favorite movie. Like, throw out a movie. Any movie. Doesn't matter. Movie you like.
Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Sex, Lies, and Video. Okay. So in Sex, Lies, and Videotape, you have James Spader, who suffered some trauma going back to see an old friend of his from college. And James Spader has this thing. He enjoys recording women talking about their sexual experiences. By the way, it's a great movie. When you're watching that, when I was watching that, I completely identify with the James Spader character, because if there's one thing I've always wanted to know is women's feelings about sexuality, and it's hard to have that conversation. So when I was watching that movie, I'm like, would I do what he does? Like, would I take a video camera with me everywhere I went and like make videotapes of just women I don't necessarily really know and ask them to sit down and turn on a camera and explain to me their sexual experiences? So I was thinking, could I be James Spader in that movie? Or would I be Peter Gallagher? Because my wife's Andy McDowell, but her sister's way more hot than she is. And I mean, you're always asking yourself, would I do that? And I think the great stories put the audience in that mindset. Because you want to love the characters, and you're always asking yourself, would I do that? Like, if I was that character, would I do that? And if you're that engaged and you're asking yourself this throughout the entire thing, and by the way, I do that with comic books. Like, I still wonder if I was Ozymandias, as smart as he was, as rich as he was, and my desire to bring peace to the world, would I do the fucked up shit he does in Watchmen? Like, would I go that far?
Yeah.
You know, would I do that? And I still, to this day, even right now, I just ask myself in my own head, I still don't know.
Yeah.
It's been 36 years.
What makes Sex, Lies, and Videotapes so unique is how little actual sex there is in the movie. And a lot of it happens off camera.
Yeah.
So, I think it's very clever to be able to pull off, a discovery. It's like a discovery film, if you will, since there's certain scenes where you're watching an actual video in a movie, and discovering what's happened as a result of this. But, one other thing I wanted to tell you about today was that, as I told you, I met Julian Mushkin earlier, and his wife and daughter, who were also at the con. And Julian invited me to go along with him to this panel called the Nacelle Company, Boldly Going Forward. And they're the ones who were responsible for the movies that made us, or the toys that made us. Yes.
I love those.
And they are also responsible for this new Star Trek documentary called The Center Seat, 55 Years of Star Trek.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to be in that.
I'm sorry, Robert.
I think Mark Altman was, though. So that's good.
Well, it's coming out on the Discovery Channel, and they showed the trailer for it, and it looks amazing. And, and I'm sorry about how that went down, but
I chose to be an Axonar, so I made my bed. I tried. It could have gone another way. It's fine.
Well, it looks like it's going to be really good, Robert.
I can't wait. I mean, I'm really excited to see it. It's funny because from a documentary perspective, I've been involved with Star Trek for a long time. I spent at least, and also making Free Enterprise. In addition to that, it's funny. Like, I think Star Trek and comic books. If you think about the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby creations and Marvel Comics, if you think about, Captain America is an old character that was later became, Marvel, what it morphed into. But if you think about Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, they were characters born out of the 60s, and some of them came even earlier, like Namor and Captain America or whatever. And if you think about, like, the pop culture from the 60s, like Star Trek or Doctor Who or James Bond or all these things, the fact that they've endured is pretty cool. And that Star Trek is 55 years old, and there's a reason for that. And it gives me no pleasure to not like... I hate that I don't like modern Star Trek. I don't like it. I don't like that just like when I read a lot of what's passing from Marvel Comics or DC Comics, I don't like that. I don't like not liking things.
Yeah.
I hate it, as a matter of fact. And it makes me crazy that one of my favorite things in the world I cannot stand now. It's a weird position to be in. I hate the fact that on Tuesday, the third book in the Star Trek Coda series is released, and it's going to be, that's it. That's the last Star Trek novel I will ever buy. And I've been buying Star Trek novels since I was 5. Because they've had to sweep away. They're like, well, you had 20 years. They have to reckon the authors that have been doing all this great work. Here's what I can't stand. All the authors that have been doing all this great work for 2 decades, bolstering the Star Trek franchise, making it awesome, because it's not reconciling with what they did with Picard, and the people that created Picard put 1/100th of the creative effort in than these authors did for the last 20 years. That because there's a hierarchy of things, movies and TV will always trump books. And media tie-ins like Star Trek novels, like, pfft, who cares? So I've been reading these books for 20 years.
Yeah.
And because the Picard TV series that I hate, that I think is creatively bankrupt, that creative bankruptcy has caused the end of this amazing creativity in the novel realm.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't seem fair. Luckily, they gave the novelists this opportunity to destroy the universe. They're doing Crisis on Infinite Star Trek Universes. They're going to destroy the entire Star Trek timeline and reboot it so Picard is reconciled with where they're supposed to be. But the problem that I have is that what they've been asked to destroy is way better than the very thing that they're destroying it because of, which is the Picard TV series. Mm-hmm. And that's what bothers me the most.
Yeah.
I mean,
so you feel as though there's now, with the modern take on it, there's a lack of appreciation for these characters and basically the richness of storytelling when it comes to these particular characters.
100%.
Okay.
And 100%. And I feel that, here's the thing. I understand the creative impulse. You want to make something your own. Mm-hmm. So there is an impulse, especially now, our heroic characters, our comic characters, whether it's Luke, Han, and Leia, whether it's the Avengers, whether it's Star Trek, these characters were always meant to be timeless. They were written to be archetypical, that they would transcend the time. Like you watch the original Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, in 50 or 100 years, they'll still work because they were designed to be literally universally accepted. Yeah. Now, somebody might get mad with the first Star Wars that, where's anybody of color on it? Why is Luke, Han, Uncle Owen, and Aunt Beru? And I would say, but the people it's the aliens. It's Mos Eisley's spaceport. But there's always going to be somebody who will bitch and moan and complain. But in terms of Star Trek, there is so much material out there. Mm-hmm. But then any creative wants to come on board and go, well, I'm going to change it and I'm going to get to add my part.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I get that. But you also have to remember that these characters were created at a different time in history.
Yeah.
And you might want to change them, but what you're doing is you're putting your interests in front of the characters and legacy of the storytelling. And I hate that.
Yeah, I get it. I dig it. I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it with some of the IPs that I enjoy.
I mean, look at our comic characters.
Yeah.
Doctor Who.
I mean, like you retcon. Here's the funny thing. Here's what really bothers me.
Yeah.
My whole philosophy of life is I want to hear your story.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear. Tell me your story. I love stories.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you're white, yellow, brown, red, black, straight, gay, religious, not. Don't care.
Yeah.
Just tell me a good story.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is all the subgenres and all the subcultures and all the minorities, they've got great stories because there's a specificity to their stories that we don't normally get.
Yeah.
And I love learning about different cultures through their storytelling.
Yeah.
I remember watching there's an Indian film called Lagan. Now, I hadn't seen a lot of Bollywood movies. It's a 3-hour movie about cricket, the game cricket.
Yeah.
I saw it before I went to New Zealand to work on the Lord of the Rings documentaries. And when I was there, one of the girls that worked at Weta, she's like, "Hey, man, let me take you to a cricket match." I'm like, "Really? Like a real cricket match?" And I got to go to my first cricket match, and I actually got to play cricket there. And I wouldn't have had an interest had I not seen Lagan, this 3-hour Bollywood movie that Columbia released, Sony released, about cricket.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, I'll watch anything about anyone. Just tell me a good story.
Yeah. You know what? It's amazing because when I lived in Australia, one of my first Well, no, I'm not going to say my first because I actually saw the film. I saw Attack of the Clones before I was actually, really, really introduced into Tamora Morrison. And one of the films that I actually saw of his, that just blew my
Once
mind.
Were Warriors.
Once Were Warriors. Once
Dude.
We Were Warriors. Yep. That movie, just the story behind it because it dealt with the culture, basically, with the culture,
Maori culture. The people.
Maori culture and the beliefs, but at the same time, just the richness of the storytelling, but then the drama that was in it and the struggles of Jake the Musk himself. Like, man, like that's it shows his range of where he is now. But it was so rich in storytelling, dealing with culture, but so rich in storytelling. And that's what made that movie to me, one of the movies that I probably wouldn't have never seen until I moved to Sydney in Sydney, Australia. And that it was brilliantly done. I loved it. I really loved it.
That was directed by Lee Tamahori, who went on to direct a James Bond movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's another film, it's more historical about Maori culture called Utu.
Yeah.
UTU, that was directed by Jeff Murphy, who was a second unit director. He also directed a wonderful New Zealand science fiction film called The Quiet Earth. And he passed away. But yeah, I mean, Tamora Morrison, I got to tell you, one of the most exciting things to me about the Book of Boba Fett is, while you wouldn't necessarily know it from Attack of the Clones, he's a great actor.
Yes, he is.
He's really good, and I think that he's really going to get to shine in Book of Boba Fett.
Yes.
And that, by the way, isn't that coming in
so
just a few weeks?
In a few weeks.
December
bro.
29th.
Oh, man, all that, I have to wait. Oh, man.
I can't wait, bro. But the thing is, that's the thing. We get a chance to really explain, and I think it's his time. It's about time that the world gets to know Tamora Morrison the way he should be known.
How about the fact? How about the fact that Hot Toys has made sure that his face, every permutation of his face, his head sculpts, whether it's got tattooed,
he is eating right now. Like, he is literally eating right now because he's like, my likeness is there. People enjoy my likeness. You can put it on any of the clones, and it's just going to be. He is eating right now. And one of the biggest things that I love about Book of Boba right now is that the diversity they're showing. You have a Maui, and then you have like Asian influence. Like, that is what society should be about. Giving these people a forefront, putting them out there, to whereas now they're seen, they have a space. Like, we can all have a space to exist, and no matter what the genre is, whether it's science fiction, it doesn't always have to be, an historically driven type of film. It can be something that's fun, and it can. And I'm glad that there's a space, for storytelling. And I'm just so happy for him. Like, I am extreme. I've always been into, ever since I've seen him, I've been a Tamora Morrison fan.
Yeah.
And it just puts a stamp on it for me.
Well, on the flip side of that, Ming Na. Fennec Shan. Come on, man. I mean, it's funny to me because, growing up in Seattle, we had a very large Asian community. Yeah. And when I was growing up, I never considered Asian Americans or anybody of Asian descent any kind of minority or anything, because I was so into, like, whether it was Japanese, and also on my street, I had a Chinese family at one end, and we shared our front lawn with a Japanese family. We didn't build a fence or anything. And I'm like, I like girls. So to see, like, Ming Na, as Fennec Shan, I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
It's bring it on.
And bro, like, you know what? The thing is, she is timeless. She doesn't age. Like, she literally does not age. I didn't realize how she does not age. She looks fabulous, bro. Like, she looks amazing. And she's still fit. Like, you put her in any action and
she's a geek, man. Yeah. She's got some geek bona fides there. That chick knows what's up. Yeah, she knows. She was a fan too. I love it. I love to see her, like, talk about and look, although I will say, Hot Toys, come on, bro.
Yeah, they need to do it.
Come on, Howard. Where's my Fennec Shan?
Just give it to me. I told the
Well,
world that I'm getting 3, and they think I'm playing. I'm getting 3
it's
of
been
them.
announced, but they just haven't released it yet.
No.
Well, they showed the picture of her.
Yeah.
You know,
They showed it. They showed it during Sideshow's Con. Like that's when we actually saw it, but we haven't seen anything since. And I'm
If
like,
they don't
come on,
make it,
man.
a third party will make a Fennec Shand.
Yeah, they will, and I will put her on my Boba Fett throne.
Yeah.
You know, sitting next to her.
It'd be a travesty if Howard doesn't release her. It would. Like that'd be the dumbest thing he could have ever done. Like literally one of the dumbest things he could have ever done.
First of all, you'd think that if one of the great things, I mean, thank God I'm getting a Tony Lung action figure.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, after they canceled my Lust Caution Tony Lung
Yeah.
in his beautiful linen suit,
Yeah.
that was my most eagerly awaited action figure of 2021. Tony Lung from Ong Lee's Lust Caution in a linen suit it came with a chair.
You should have asked them to give you the prototype.
I think I'm convinced the only reason they canceled it because I was the only one who pre-ordered the figure. Because everyone's like, "Oh my God, did you see the Ong Lee Lust Caution 2-pack?"
So they canceled it?
Yeah, man, dude, I had it in order. So Lust Caution's an Ong Lee movie. It's very sexy. NC-17. Tony Lung, great sex in it, and it's a period piece. Spy thriller kind of a thing. In like I think it's in the 30s, and I couldn't believe I bang on about how much I love Tony Lung in the Wong Kar-wai movies and in Hard Boiled, John Woo's Hard Boiled. I couldn't believe that they were gonna make a Tony Lung. As a matter of fact, I gotta find it. The Lust Caution 2-pack. I lost my mind. It was both characters. The nothing is better than getting a great tailored 6th scale linen suit for a character.
Yeah.
And this Tony Lung, let me see if I can find it. I don't know if I can. Let's see. 1/6 Lust Caution. And it was so sad. Oh, why yes, I found pictures. And you'll see it. You'll look at this, dude. Okay. God damn it! Why didn't they make this? This pisses me off. I pre-ordered this shit as soon as it was available. Now I'm gonna give you this picture and tell me first of all, Tony Lung is a fucking baller. Like I've often said that if I was not born a cis white male in America, if I could be anybody in the world, I'd want to be Tony Lung. Because he is such a badass. Now I'm going to show you. Here it is. So this set, you can imagine, knowing my action figure chair fetish. Look at this. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is the third party. Actually, it's not third party because it was an actual. This was from Smart Toys. It was a pre-order. This is the Tony Lung Lust Caution 2-pack. That was going to come out. I had pre-ordered this. I had spent the money. You know, I had dropped my pre-order. I was waiting for months and months and months and months. And then they just canceled it. Now, just so you know, if you want to see, I mean, people are like, "Why, Rob, you're nuts." Yes, if you didn't understand that you've watched the show for so long, I am nuts. But now look at this. This is action figure Tony Lung from Ong Lee's Lust Caution sitting in a chair. I mean, look at this tailored linen suit. Look at I mean, is he not now we're getting a Wenwu. We're getting a Wenwu figure. But what I wanted was period Tony Lung. I mean, they'll never make In the Mood for Love, Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love figures, but man, did I want these. And I was
Dope about Tony is he always gets the girl, bro.
Dude.
He always gets the girl, bro.
Well, except in The Mood for Love.
Well, yeah. But I mean, you know what I mean by getting the girl is like he's always attracting women. Like, you know what I mean? Like his character is just that individual. Like he's, you know, super smooth, suave.
Dude.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. He's I always say like he's the Asian Billy D, bro. He is, bro.
No, he
He's
is,
just that smooth.
and he is.
He's
I
so
mean,
smooth, bro.
oh man, if you kids out there watching, if you haven't seen John Woo's masterpiece, Hard Boiled, one of the great action movies of all time. Action figures too. They never made hard boiled figures. Although I do have a great Chow Yun Fat figure from A Better Tomorrow. I have to say you got to watch Hard Boiled because Tony Leung as an undercover cop, talk about a tragic hero. My God.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hapkido Locke sends in a tip and says, I guess I said a quote permeating lack of reverence. Screenplays, the nature of heroism, and even some music recitals. Well said. Well, Hapkido Locke, I mean, I go back to my college, The Making of Meaning. We imbue things with meaning. And I think that human existence is all about finding the meaning in our own lives. We live in a universe that is essentially, it's meaningless. But our endeavor for the blink of an eye that all of us exist on this planet, in this universe, it's up to us to imbue our lives with meaning. And it's also up to us to help others imbue their lives with meaning. And if we decide that their endeavors don't mean anything, if we decide that, fuck it, who cares about art? Fuck the Mona Lisa. I'm just going to spray paint her face. I mean, I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to live in a world where a painting that Leonardo da Vinci did hundreds of years ago that has endured through all this time isn't respected.
Yeah.
Because human endeavor is only one man in the billions of years that the universe has existed, one dude created one image that's hanging in the Louvre. In the entire infinitude of the universe?
Yeah.
That is something that we need to be able to reframe human existence and to look at something like that and go, that's amazing. You know, I talked earlier about Biggie Smalls freestyling at 18.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was amazing. The universe, I mean, people might look at that and go, I don't like rap. I'm like, okay, you're missing the point. You're watching a poet who is creating poetry instantaneously. How do you do that?
A play on words and creating, you're creating a narrative based on your atmosphere. He's able to basically through Biggie and through like most lyricists, they're painting a picture that you can smell, you can taste. It takes you back to where these things
But they're not even writing it, dude. They're coming up with it on the fly.
But you know what? Even with these individuals, it's like, I and I always say this, like, just being a native New Yorker, like, I always get a feel for Brooklyn through Big. I always get a feel of Queens through Nas. I'll always get a feel of Harlem through certain artists. You know what I mean? Like, the thing is, because they tell the stories of things that you really have seen before, that you can relate to. Your local bodega, your local barbershop, the corners that you might have actually walked, Gates and Grants in Brooklyn. You know what I mean? Like, I went to McLaurin, in Queens, but basically St. Peter's, like all these places that the nostalgia is there through storytelling, and they just actually give you that, and it's brilliantly done. Like, the thing is there has to be a level of respect for all music. When people say, oh, I don't like rap music, it's a whole bunch of, okay, I understand that you may, and it's a matter of opinion for a lot of people, but the thing is, there's storytelling, there's great, like, the thing is, I look at it like, it's not just sonics, it's not just a whole bunch of words, it's story. You have to listen, and it takes you to those places. So,
Well, I used to be, let's just say, prejudicial against country music.
Yeah.
I was not, and then I remember
in country music as well.
I remember hearing a Steve Earle and the Dukes record.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that would be entirely country, but I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
Country music is storytelling music.
Yeah.
Like you just said, I love the stories. Like if you play the old joke, if you play a country music record backwards, you get your job back, you get your dog back, your wife comes home. Because you're playing it backwards. Because you play it forwards, you lose your wife, you lose your dog, you lose your house, you lose your job. Exactly. But it was funny because a lot of people, I like all music. I like all music. I'll listen to any music.
Yeah.
And I think we decide what matters.
Yeah.
Like don't you think?
Yes, and I wanted to tell you that another panel that I'm looking forward to tomorrow at Comic-Con is the Shang-Chi Cultural Impact and Celebration of Fight Choreography.
Wow.
Yeah.
God bless a panel that exists like that. I love that.
Yes, and I'm going to start talking about martial arts films on my channel in the next week or so, just to kind of revisit that and kind of enjoy a lot of the films that we know and love, especially the martial arts scenes.
Oh man, I mean, Criterion released that great Bruce Lee box set. I mean, and Arrow did their Shaw Brothers. I think the second one's come out, the Shaw Brothers sets. I mean, the martial arts movies have such a long, great tradition. I'm a huge fan. Ash Chowan, hello Ash, says, I agree with you regarding the lack of reverence in our society. The sad part is that the younger generations are so inundated and obsessed with their online personas that they can't see beyond themselves to appreciate anything that is not them.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be that guy. Like, once again, Rob Burnett's yelling at the clouds. But I do think that there is... I mean, I don't know if this is true of the two of you, but when I was growing up, I loved things outside of myself. Whether it's movies or my grandmother, like I said, my grandmother made sure that she didn't just take me to the symphony. I mean, she took me to see plays. I saw The Fantastics, I saw Camelot, I saw Annie, I saw Cats, I saw Les Mis.
Yeah. Because
Seattle had a great theater scene and we had a great symphony scene. I saw the sci-fi version of The Ring of the Nibelung that the Seattle Opera put on. Yeah. And for me, it was always about other people's work. Not that it inspired me to do work, but I loved going outside myself. It wasn't about me. Yeah. It was about going to see what everybody else had done. And I feel like Ash is exactly right. I mean, we live in a world where people are just making sure they get what they want coming into them as opposed to going outside and meeting the world on its own terms.
Exactly. I think like one of my favorite experiences ever, theater experiences, years ago is when I actually first got a chance. It was crazy because when my daughter Skylar was born, she was young. She I think she was around about 5 or 6 years old.
She was born at 5 and 6?
No.
I'm just kidding.
Well, we went to actually go see Bring the Noise, Bring the Funk, and that was Savion Glover. I'll never forget that experience because seeing him, and it was we had really good seats, great seats. The show was phenomenal. I'll never forget, once near the end, he looked at my daughter, pointed at her, and he just looked at her, pointed at her, smiled and stuff like that. And the joy on her face when she saw it, like she giggled, she looked at me and just like point, but she enjoyed it like this. And I think it was just one of those things where everybody in the audience really embellished the sonics, the sound, just the quality of what was brought during that presentation. I think that right now the biggest problem is that we live in a world where we live in a very narcissistic world, bro. Like everyone is for self and not for everyone else outside of their circle. We see that even with a lot of I hate to say it, content creating, even when it comes to like YouTubers. We see that, what I mean? There's less of sharing ideas and it's more so me, and that's terrible.
Well, that's what I think. One of the things, I mean, look, I met you
Yeah.
I met both of you really this year. In terms of actually interacting live on this show, and you brought me on your show, going on Justin's shows. One of the things I've really loved about, especially during the pandemic over the last 2 years, is I found these YouTube communities to be very, very inspiring. You know, in the sense that I can do my own show and talk into a camera. There's nobody here.
Yeah.
It's such a weird thing. I'm looking at this green light, and I'm like, am I connecting with anyone?
Yeah.
Like sometimes I get off the show and I'm like, what did I just say? You know, I feel like, but like when we go on our like little toy shows, we're talking about our love of these action figures. And what's funny is we all really love these action figures.
Yeah,
and if we were just people like, yeah, they're cool, nobody would watch.
Nah.
But like we're having these long. I mean, the fact that Keola and Will Foxification's love of Pennywise, it becomes a thing, and but it's true. Like it's real. Yeah. Like I was looking at the poster of the Matrix Resurrection you sent me with Justin's face transplant. Every time I look at that, I laugh my ass off. Yeah. I'm like, and it's just so funny, and it's funny because I love Justin, but I don't think he likes. I don't think he really likes us ever making light of this, you know, and I don't think he understands the love we have for him.
The love that we have for it, straight up.
You know,
it's like just loosen up a little bit. You'll understand it. But the thing is like we won't stop because.
No, I'm not. Never.
Never stop. Like never stop. Like it's just endearing. It's like I said, it's an endearing thing. Like
well, the funny thing is like these we have these conversations and we're celebrating all the stuff that we love.
Yeah,
you know, like
that's the beauty of it.
Listening to Mm's account of San Diego today. I mean, your excitement's in your voice.
Yeah. Well, Robert, there's another panel about how fandom has saved sci-fi franchises, especially focusing on the importance of 2020 and how, I guess, although I don't believe this is entirely true, that franchises are listening to fans more than ever, although it doesn't entirely feel that way. But there is a panel discussing that tomorrow as well. And have you heard of a film called Bundy Manor?
No.
Well, it's a new horror film that's coming out. And it's about a family that moves to a small town and they discover an extreme haunted house run by a charming retired surgeon. But the point is that in this particular panel, you're going to meet the cast and crew and you're going to see the official trailer and they're going to talk about the making of the film tomorrow.
Well, that's good. I mean, I love that people are getting, look, it's so hard to get. I mean, I would love to have talked about Tango Shalom at Comic-Con or Sidious. It just wasn't that kind of a movie, but it's great. I love hearing people's stories when they get projects made. I love those, and I love that you're going to go to that panel and support them. No, I mean, I'd love to come. I wish I could come down. I want to come down. I can't believe I've gone to every Comic-Con since 1988.
Well, I'm surprised if you don't show up to the Comic-Con, Robert. I thought it was one of your favorite things to go to.
It is, but the thing, okay. This Comic-Con, the people that I usually go with, we always have panels, and we don't have any panels. And normally I do 5 or 6 panels. You know, we're not even ending. There's no Starship SmackDown panel this year. It's so weird. We've ended it every year since 2002. This is the first Comic-Con in 19 years. We're not ending it. Which
that's insane. I mean, I think even at the New York Comic-Con there weren't any panels.
It was weird. I mean, it's a bizarre.
Yeah, it's like there were less panels, you know, more things, you know, as far as like, you know, you had Artist Alley, you had, you know, things of that nature, but there weren't really a lot of panels. You know what I mean?
I think there were a lot of panels, Lael.
Not really. Not
I
like
looked at the
what we're
schedule and I
talking
thought I
about.
saw quite a few.
There were, but not the ones I'm talking about. Major panels, like when we talk about SmackDown, when we talk about like just I'm not saying
No,
that
no, I think you're right because look, I was surprised when I went and looked at the Comic-Con panels this year at San Diego. There's some really good ones. I was surprised at actually how much good content there was, and what you're getting is what Comic-Con used to be to me at its heyday. When it wasn't jam packed, when you could actually drift in and out of panels, you didn't have to wait in line, and like you might not get in, and guards would say you can't. I mean, in a way, I really do want to come down tomorrow, and or if not tomorrow, even on Sunday, and just. But I don't want to. I can't. Sunday I've got our show, but I would love to come down tomorrow, just because I love San Diego. I mean, I've been staying at the Marriott since 1994, and it just bothers me that I'm not there. But then again, all the crew that I come down with, no one's going, and it's so weird. I'm like, what? How can we not go? By the way, Stub McShave sends. By the way, I got to tell Stubble that Elizabeth watched Wheel of Time, and all I got from her, she just texted me. She's like, all caps, Wheel of Time, exclamation point, exclamation point. She watched the first 2 episodes, and she's like, this is amazing. I'm like, what the fuck, man? Why are you watching this without me? How can you? What? We started watching the first episode. Now I was so pissed. I'm like, Stubble McShave is going to get pissed at me if you watch Wheel of Time and I don't watch it with you. So I'm like, we better catch up this weekend. Just saying, Stubble. So Stubble says, I think that one factor for the reverence of great movies diminishing is that there's so much movie and streaming content made now. A movie or a TV series is less special because there's 200 other pieces of content coming to streaming services each month. That's a very good point. A very good point.
That was my point. Like the thing is, I think it's starting to diminish because a lot of these, streaming services are buying the rights to certain films. They're basically buying, these ideas and they're putting them on platform because they want to continue to have those platforms relevant. Whereas I just feel is that some of those films, some and really good films that should have been shown in the theater or given an opportunity in the theater. And that's the thing is like, I think there's a catch-22 with streaming. Yes, there's an opportunity for really creative directors and producers, stuff like that, to showcase their product. But at the same time, it's really diminishing the theater aspect of it, the theater experience. Not too many people are going to the theaters when they can actually watch the same, from home. And I think that sometimes that really, and it's not, look, there's a time and a place for everything. And we look for evolution in everything, and that's fine. But at the same time, preserving the theater experience, that's more so the social aspect of it. You go to a theater, you watch these films. After the film, you stand out, you talk about it. You watch, you hear the laughter, you hear the cries, you hear the roars, you hear all of that, and it's like that adrenaline rush of being in the theater. I can't do that at home. Like I can't do that with just 2 or 3 individuals because it's not the same experience. Watching it, on these different platforms. And I think that's where, again, I totally agree. I think that the more content that we're getting, granted, I'm not saying it's not good content and it's not a good space, but at the same time, it is pulling away from the cinematic experience. I just feel as though that there needs to be more emphasis on that. And I do like the simple fact that we even got like that commercial that we got from, what is her name? She's married to Keith Urban.
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman. That commercial that that came out with her talking about the theater experience and how we enjoy films and how that should be important. I love that commercial because it's the truth. Like you know what I mean, the theater experience has always been something. The smell of popcorn when you walk through the door, getting your snacks, sitting in your seats, waiting for like the commercials, although you don't have to go through like an hour long or 45 minutes of trailers, but getting to that actual film and just enjoying that experience, it's sort of like been diminished because now all these films are going straight to streaming platforms and streaming services and stuff like that. So I just feel as though, like, I mean, I certainly agree with that statement. I do.
What do you think?
Um, about the commercial, the AMC commercial that
Well, I mean, I think the idea of the reverence of movies, because there's so much content coming out every month. I mean, is it even possible to have a movie that's special anymore? I mean, I feel like
I think Tango Shalom was special.
Hang on, let me PayPal you. What did I say? I was going to pay. No, but I appreciate
that.
Well, no, I mean, look, I think so, but I mean, it was, look, that was a film that was made against all odds, and it was truly made with love, with no help from anyone. And we had no idea. We don't know if it'll ever show up on a streaming service. We only need 29 more reviews. Please download it, watch it in the next 3 days for $3.99 on Amazon, and give us a 5-star review, even if you don't like it. Take out your hatred on me, but just give us a 5-star review. It'll help the movie get to a larger audience. By the way, the Parliament of World Religions did a Facebook post about Tango Shalom like 2 days ago, about how they appreciated its message of interfaith cooperation. I'm like, really? And UNESCO, the United Nations, the education division, tweeted out about it. It's so weird. It's crazy, but good, which is, we'll see. Here's Chris Cohen says, have any of you heard the new Silk Sonic album?
Yes, I have, and I was waiting for you to pull this one up.
Bruno Mars and Anderson.
Yes.
Paak are two musicians at the peak of their powers right now. All right, Lael, I have not heard this. What do you think?
Bro, right now.
I'm a huge Bruno Mars fan, by the way.
When you get a chance to get this album, like, listen to it from front to back. It is an experience, bro. It is. It's so soulful, but it's soulful, it's rich, but at the same time, it's highly creative. It's showing two artists who came together and made a masterpiece. And it's basically, literally, it's a master class in how you make an incredible album with live music, great lyrics, great content. The sonic's incredible. Like, I love it, bro. Like, literally, if let's put it this way, it's like I'm reliving the feel of what it meant for me to be in California, the times that I've actually gone. But at the same time, it's just an experience with I can't say enough about me and Toya. We listen to this album almost every day, like literally every day, like when we're traveling or when we're at the house or whatever we're doing, like even when we put up Christmas trees, like we listen to it because it gives you a certain feel. Like bro, they even have Bootsy Collins narrating the album.
Really?
Yes. Bootsy Collins is narrating the album.
By the way, just so you know, CD, yes, brothers and sisters, CD ordered.
Yes.
Ordered.
Yeah, bro.
Although they don't even have it in stock, because who makes CDs? The estimated delivery is December 8th or 9th.
Yeah, bro. That album is phenomenal. Like, if you get it, like literally if you get it, it's an experience. Once you get it,
oh no, like, I'm getting it. It's coming on December 8th or 9th.
Once you get it, the experience is just it's everything. It is everything.
Dude, Bootsy Collins narrates it. I can't believe it.
Yeah,
really?
Bro. And you will appreciate it. Once you listen to it, like I said, Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak, his story in general, like just, from, his history, and he's a musical genius. Bruno Mars is a genius, and them two collectively coming together, and that band, the sonics of that album, Rob, is
I can only imagine.
You'd love it. You'd love it. You definitely
love it. I have to tell you, the greatest sonics I've heard on an album in recent years, everyone knows Yellow, the band Yellow. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. In the
Yeah.
80s, yellow was
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last year, Yellow put out a new album,
Mhm.
and it was mixed in Dolby Atmos.
Yeah.
Not many people would buy it. It's unfucking believable.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been listening to Yellow for almost 40 years. They had one of my first import CDs I ever bought was called The New Mix in One Go, which was a Yellow compilation record. And I think Virgin put it out or something. Incredible. But the fact that they're still making records 40 years later, I mean, God bless them. And Duran Duran celebrating their 40th year as a band this year. Future Past. By the way, the lovely Emma Bannon, Post-Geek Singularity Foundational member, she got me a signed copy
Yeah.
of the CD of Future Past, the new Duran Duran record. I haven't got it yet, but she got me one. So shout out to you, Emma.
Duran. Yes.
This is a good question. Lael, you're going to have to take this one. Sonny Dominguez, our man Sonny. You hung out with her, or him. Hung out with her today. Sonny hung out with Sonny says, has storytelling changed due to cis white male writer-directors criticized for telling the stories of people of color? Do you think some stories will not never be told because of our current culture? Will it swing culturally anytime soon? And if so, what's your guess in years?
That's a good question.
I know.
That's a good question. That's
you know what? I mean, on Midnight Metal, these people are not slacking. They are.
They're not. I think. You know, here I've always lived by. It doesn't matter who tells the story: white, black, Hispanic, Asian. It doesn't. Of any other call, as long as the source material and as long as you get it right. And I think that there's still as long as you get it right, as long as you're paying homage to the culture, you know, like that's one of the things that made The Color Purple incredible. And Steven Spielberg's, you know, depiction of
Can you imagine if you tried to direct that today, they would have eviscerated him.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Whoopi Goldberg said they eviscerated him back then too.
They did, but you know what? It was a cultural phenomenon.
Dude, that movie was the second movie I ever cried in.
Yeah, it is a cultural.
The first
phenomenon.
was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, but just saying.
And still is. But the thing is, it's like, you know what? It's still relevant, so it doesn't matter. I just think that now, but you got to think that, you know, back then, you know, even earlier on, like there weren't a lot of, you know, black filmmakers given the opportunity to really tell their own story. Whereas now it is. But I just think that we live in a society now where people.
We live in a society?
Well, yeah. I think we basically live in a space now where we've culturally segregated ourselves. Like literally. Like we've culturally segregated ourselves
dude,
for reasons.
I agree with you. Why though? I mean,
because that narrative is being pushed. That's the problem. Like that narrative is being pushed and people are being programmed to believe that the only way to tell a good story is from your own. I get that. And I understand that there's a space there is, but at the same time, if someone is willing to step up to the plate and tell stories that will never be told, no matter if you're black, white, or whatever, and if it's told the right way and it's something that wouldn't you want to hear it? Wouldn't you want to see it?
Dude,
so that's what I'm saying. I think the opportunity is there. Like this just needs to be given and not subjectively looked at as if, oh no, you're not able, you shouldn't be. How can you tell a story if you've never lived it? Well, if they're willing to study and get it from the horse's mouth and get it from individuals who have lived it and they're going to actually stick to it, then why not? Because what if they don't tell the story? Would it ever be made? You know what I mean?
Well, I have to tell you. First of all, I'll go on record. I love The Color Purple. Love it. I think I saw it like 8 times in the theater. I thought it was a brilliantly made film. I loved all of the actors in it. It was so entertaining. It's so beautifully made. I love Quincy Jones's soundtrack. I love Margaret Avery. in it as
Yeah.
Shug Avery, and Margaret Avery starred in a science fiction film called The Lathe of Heaven that I love. And what's amazing is, and even Oprah Winfrey and Whoopi Goldberg, especially Whoopi Goldberg, talked about. Okay, first of all, Sonny, there is a documentary on Netflix. It is a British-made documentary called "They've Gotta Have Us," Black Hollywood.
Yes.
And
It's
it is.
on-
I did not know this even existed. I stumbled
Netflix.
across it on. Now, unfortunately, I don't think it's a little bit of style over substance, but it's still a great documentary. The people they talk to in this documentary are amazing. But it was directed by a photographer, a stylist, so the meat of it could have been more. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's an incredible documentary. The people that are in it, it's every black star. And this is where I saw Whoopi Goldberg talking about this. She's like, if Steven Spielberg didn't make this movie, it never would have been made.
Yeah.
And he's like, she goes, on the set of The Color Purple, there were like more black people than I've ever seen working on anything ever.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what people forget. Like here's another thing I hate about America and about my own side of the aisle as a left-leaning liberal. I really feel that the practical implication of things has been forgotten about. Like, everybody's demanding, we want this, we want that. And I'm like, okay, so how are we going to do that? Who's going to do that? Like, if we have to build a house or we have to make a website, or how are we going to do that? Yeah. And I feel that the practical reality of what everybody wants, we want social change right now. Great, so do we.
Yeah.
How are you going to implement that social change? Yeah. You know, I got criticized because it was offensive to me to see a 76-year-old black former police captain dead on the sidewalk. And I made a very incendiary post about that. And people didn't, because no one understood nuance. And people were saying that I was advocating killing looters. And I'm like, no, I was speaking about this man who's dead on the sidewalk. I was like, where was somebody who loved the Second Amendment to protect him? Father of 5, grandfather of 10. I got canceled for that because no one got it. No one understood what really. And by the way, the video that I was tweeting was not put with, just my words were taken out of context. If you didn't see him with the video, suddenly I am a racist that advocates killing looters.
Wow.
But They've Gotta Have Us is a great documentary. I mean, hang on. It's an adequate documentary, but the voices it gives, that it bolsters, are great. The people in it are great. Yeah. And it's all about the rise of black filmmakers, and it's incredible who's in it. Yeah. As a matter of fact, looking on the IMDb, I mean, I think about people that I love, like Nelson George, Cassie Lemons, David. I can't even pronounce his name. Yes. Yeah. Jesse Williams, Debbie Allen, John Boyega. Yeah. Ruth Carter, Ernest Dickerson, Larry Fishburne, Barry Jenkins, Delroy Lindo, who's in fucking Blade. Can we talk about? First of all, I will watch. If Delroy Lindo read the phone book, I would watch that shit. Yeah. I mean, Robert Townsend, Harry Belafonte. I mean, Diane Carroll, Don Cheadle, Natalie Emanuel, Whoopi Goldberg, Cuba Gooding Jr., Taylor Hackford, who directed, one of the great films that, of course, it was a musical biopic, but still, I mean, Boots Riley. Yeah. In this documentary, Jill Scott. Yes. Come on, Will.i.am, Juicy Smollett, the famous French actor, as Dave Chappelle would tell you. I mean,
Yes.
it's a pretty great documentary, so check it out.
Yes. Yes.
But Sonny, the answer to that question is, look, I never thought I would live in a world as a white, cis male director, even though I'm very open to all kinds of behavior. I never thought I'd live in a world where I'm literally unwanted, where people would be like, yeah, well, we're not really interested in hearing what you want to do. I've actually been told that.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, I do have a project out there that preaches inclusion, but no.
Wow.
But on the other hand, I mean, look, it's just a time, I have to tell you, Joel Zwick, who directed My Big Fat Greek Wedding, he's directed hundreds of episodes of a sitcom, he said something really interesting. For himself, he said, for me, I'm done. I have no problem letting the new generation, whether they're people of color, whether they're women directors, whether they're LGBTQ directors, to come in and tell their stories.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I'm like, yeah, but dude, I'm not done. I'm younger than you, bro. I got some time but it's just going to make it harder. I mean, to me, what I love about the modern age is people I haven't heard their stories. If we get those stories and they're good, I'm all for it. Bring it on.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it's a good story and if you can actually tell a good story, it doesn't matter what color you are. Just tell a good story. You know what I mean? If you want to represent a culture and you want to do, the research, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. People have, cultures that, have been culturally misplaced. And you want to actually give them a voice, if you're white and you want to tell that story and you divulge, you just put all your time and effort into making sure that it's told right, do it. And I'm still going to watch it. That's the thing, is it's like, we can't subject ourselves to a world where we're separating each other. And that actually diminishes creativity and opportunities to create something that's good, because we're looking at it from one perspective and one vantage point. Color to me has never mattered. I've coming up with a culturally diverse atmosphere and taught to love and really appreciate everybody and everybody's contribution. And in film, we want to experience that contribution. You know what I mean? And I think there's a time and a place for it. The time is now. So I don't look at color. As long as you tell a good story, I'm all in. Plain and simple.
And also, if you think about, like, we had people like Norman Jewison make A Soldier's Story, which is an incredible Herbert Rollins Jr. It's a great story, and he's a white Jewish director. At the time, Glory. Would you not want Glory to have been made?
Yeah.
Or would you say that, well, unless a black filmmaker made Glory, it wouldn't be legitimate? At the time, no one would have bankrolled Glory unless it was made by some, not just, it doesn't matter what color the director is. It matters how much money his movies have made, and that's what it comes down to. And I would think that, Glory broke Denzel Washington. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have had Denzel if it wasn't for Glory. I mean, maybe we would have got him a different way, but that was that first film that people really recognized him. And to me, I'm like, there was the character, the trans character that Scarlett Johansson was going to play, and everyone screamed and yelled, "Oh my God! It's another non-trans actor playing a trans character." And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, when Tom Hanks played a real-life character in Philadelphia that was dying of AIDS, and it was based on a situation.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if that was when AIDS was still ravaging the country and people had you had Tom Hanks playing a man dying of AIDS? I think that movie did more to change people's minds about AIDS than anything in the world would have done.
Exactly.
Because he was everyone loved him.
Phenomenal film.
Yeah, he was Forrest Gump the year before.
Exactly. So,
And
and the thing is, what was important about that film and what was incredible is that you had a white man dying of AIDS and a black lawyer representing him. Boom.
and what's funny was
Yeah.
nowadays
Yeah.
the people would bitch and moan, Tom Hanks is not gay.
Yeah.
Why is he playing this character? You should give it to a gay actor. And it's like, the very definition of an actor is to play a person they're not.
Yeah.
In the Globe Theater, when Shakespeare first performed his play, or the actors, men portrayed the parts of women.
Well, they're not attacking the Globe Theater now, are they?
No, but I'm just saying that if anyone has a sense of history, I mean, this idea that actors have to be the people they're supposed, like, I don't understand where this idea came from that an actor has to be the thing they are to portray that thing on screen.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. I mean, I understand. I don't think that a white actor should. I was just watching a video where someone asked Robert Downey Jr., would you do Tropic Thunder again now, wearing blackface the way you did? And he's like, well, I don't know, but I'm like, at the time, I think everyone understood the message the movie was conveying. Yeah. I mean, and I agree with that. One of my favorite things is when Robert Downey Jr. says, "What do you mean, you people?" And then the actual black actor of the cast goes, "What do you mean, you people?" I mean, the entire, it's right there. If you don't get what Tropic Thunder is, that's the problem. The problem is not with Tropic Thunder. The problem's with you.
With you. Because you're not seeing it. And they're giving you the issue right then and there. He was
an
Australian actor playing it's just crazy. Like, yeah, like it's but again, it's the energy you give it. If you give it that level of energy, then that's what you'll get back from it. You know what I mean? Like, and the thing is, it's like people just have to be open. So,
well, let me ask you both this. Why do you think people aren't? Like, why are people possessed by their political ideology or do people just, I mean, I think people like to feel angry because it makes them feel something.
Well, I think that they can feel angry all they want to, and it's their right to feel whatever way they want, and I don't want to try and figure out why they feel that way. I just accept it.
Well, that's true. But okay, but hang on a second. But what happens when their anger crosses what you want or prevents you from getting something that you might need or desire or makes you unsafe?
I guess the obstacle is the way, Robert.
What do you mean by that?
It means that sometimes you can't avoid an obstacle in your path and you have to try and work around it. And, we all have these difficulties, especially in the entertainment business.
No, that's true. That I totally agree with. But what about when somebody expresses and very enthusiastically expresses an opinion that you disagree with?
I that excites me. I prefer opinions that are different from mine sometimes.
Yeah, but you want to engage with them, right?
Yes.
Well, what about people that won't engage with you? That I mean, here's what what I'm saying is that I feel that I agree with you. I love every day I say, listen to someone who has a different story than you have ever heard. I love that too. But I feel that we're now living in a culture that people don't want to engage with one another. And that's terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is at their own expense.
So how do we foster a dialogue? How do we get people to talk to each other?
Bring them on the show.
Well, we could do that, but I mean, in general, like our whole political system, all of America seems so divided. And how do we? I mean, how do we get people just to and here's the thing. I think that, like, wherever you live in America, doesn't matter. Wherever you live, if, let's say, your house was on fire, I think most Americans, regardless, would come over to try and help. They would bring their hoses, they would fill up buckets, they would run over, even if they hated your guts. If they saw your house was burning down, their immediate impulse would be to try and help.
You know what I think? In order to get people to listen and have a conversation, honestly, as crazy as this, not crazy, it's just the reality. Like, social media has to be shut down for a little bit. Literally. Social media, the news, like, literally tune that out and just get back to social content where we can talk in person instead of actually over a keyboard. You know what I mean? Through whether it's Facebook, whether it's, Instagram or whatever. That's means of communication now. Like, people, like, don't talk. They don't sit down outside and have conversations anymore. Like, we rely on media to be our source of communication. Media is the middleman. They make the decisions on what we decide, how we view others. We have to do that for ourselves. Like, literally, we have to tone out all that. Like, just go outside, have a conversation, sit on a bench. You know what I mean? I did, or sit down and just have a talk with, someone who's lived and experienced life longer than you have. You know what I mean? Go to a cafe and actually have these. I mean, a lot of it now, granted, a lot of this was inflicted within the past couple of years now,
Yeah.
with the pandemic. So it's forced us to be less social out in public. But I miss the days of basically going out to cafes and just sitting down and having a conversation and just talking about life, and not, always looking at your phone, because now it's made it more, we're more reliant on technology and these devices now, and it limits the structure of natural conversation between individuals, like a real life conversation, and not just through a digital keyboard.
Oh
Literally.
no! By the way, I want to read one of our great members, one of the foundational pillars of this community, Paul from Twin Flicks,
Mhm.
says, not to bring down the mood. We are here around the San Diego area to watch our dad, who passed away, set sail when we spread his ashes in the ocean at his favorite beach. My dad was a Beatles fan and would have loved the Beatles documentary series. Well, Paul,
Condolences to your family.
condolences to you,
Definitely.
your family. Our heart goes out to you guys. I mean, you
Yes,
guys
yes,
have been
indeed.
so much. It means so much to me to get to know you guys, and you've made
Definitely.
videos, you participated. It's great to have you, and I'm so sorry for your loss. But you know what? I
Yes,
mean,
indeed.
they both of, well, both halves of Twin Flicks, they were there for their dad. I mean, they sacrificed their
Yeah.
own lives, and they were there for their father for the last,
Yeah.
years of his life. I mean, how many people do that?
Yes. The beauty of it is that now he lives on through you,
Yeah.
because you have now those stories and the things that you've experienced. You're carrying on that legacy. So he hasn't passed. He's still alive. He's just now in a supernatural form, which is much greater, and he is in the most holiest of company. So definitely, condolences. But now it's a celebration of rebirth. Definitely, he's reborn, and now, like, you're carrying on, and that's a beautiful thing. That now you can tell these stories. Now it's a space for you to basically carry on his life's work, and you've done it together, and you've had those experiences. You know what I mean? That's that same thing when I lost my father. I had those experiences that I can actually rely on, and I can still tell that story, and I can still smell the environment with that we created. I can still feel it, and that's the thing. Like, we say rest in peace. I always say basically rest in life, rest in knowing that you have now converted. You've evolved. You've evolved past this shell, and it's something more incredible. You've mutated. Now you're in a better place. and it's celebrated, and he's still walking that path with you. And if you still can, you can probably even feel the energy, embrace that energy, and tell those stories and continue on. Rest in peace, but I'm celebrating that life with you, definitely. So,
Wow, man. That was very well said. That was an amazing
yeah,
speech. Thank you for that, sir.
yeah, man, yeah, definitely.
That was you know I have to tell you, I there was a video I watched. It's like 29 minutes long, and it's about the future history of the universe,
Yeah,
and how everything entropy and we all the death of heat and all the black holes that will exist. And if you watch this 29-minute video, I've talked about it before on the show. I don't remember the name of it, but humanity and all of basically life has gone 3 minutes into the video. And then it goes further, like to like 100 trillion years. I mean, it's so. Elizabeth made me turn it off because it was so existentially destructive. You watch it and you're thinking, why am I watching this? Nothing in my life matters. But here's the thing. You know what it didn't do? And you'd watch the years, the trillions of years. Trillions of years became trillion, and that's fine. But you know what? It never took into consideration
yeah,
a moment where someone is scattering their father's ashes on the water. You know, the meaning of holding a newborn baby and listening to that baby cry. I mean, you can talk about the heat death of the universe or entropy all you want. But the moments, what it doesn't do, you can talk about it on a galactic or a universal scale that's gigantic. But you can also go back the other direction and go into those small, crazy moments where everybody has them. They're not cataloged. No one knows. The only people that know about them are the people that are here. And as infinite and crazy as the universe is, our day-to-day lives are infinitely crazy and amazing as well. And we forget that because, what'd you do today? Well, laundry. I mean, if you recontextualize it for yourself, doing laundry is amazing. Think about it. Technology, like someone said, well, I've got to make spin cycles so I can dry wet clothes. Who thought about that? Like, where did that come from? Why do we all have washer and dryers in our houses? Isn't that something that's amazing?
yeah,
I mean, I have to clean the lint shield because I know my jeans won't dry fast enough if I don't.
yeah.
And we've forgotten that.
Yeah,
We have forgotten that day-to-day existence is amazing.
Yes, it is.
We all take it for granted. I'm like, oh my God, I'm looking at my phone all day.
You know what was crazy? The other day I went to the I went to orthos, to get the follow up about my hand. And I was looking at the x-rays, and then when they took off the splint and they put this on, they were telling me how, basically the bones mend and how, you have to wait. Now, this is the jargon that he gave me. He was like, put this on. He said, wait 2 weeks before you take it off and pretty much, wash your hand and start stretching a bit. He's like, put it back on, but give it up to 5 weeks before you take it off, whatever. He's like, and come back in. We're going to do a follow up. But just how he explained and showed me how the bones interweave and they mend and how it gets sticky like glue. I was like, yo, like life is so phenomenal and how we grow and continue to evolve.
Dude.
Like I look at these things and I was like, just, I take that and I look at like just even like, I'm like, if I was thinking there, I was sitting there the entire time he was talking to me. I was like, yo, if I was Logan, this would have been healed in a matter of 10 seconds. But it's just, we are in a sense like the supernatural value of the human existence and how we see, how we heal, how we constantly evolve. Every 10 years your sense of smell and taste changes. Like it's like, yo, like it's just phenomenal. Life is phenomenal. And we sit down and watch and just learn, even like the way we think and how we create, and it just says so much, man. I just value that so much.
So why is everyone pissed off?
I don't know.
I mean, it's like you just said. I mean, the way our bodies work, the way we've evolved, it's amazing. It's astonishing.
Yeah, definitely, man, definitely.
I mean, I think back to go back to her erotic comics and all this. I've always loved eroticism, and I've always loved the idea of, sexuality and all that stuff. And we in America, we laugh. We can't. We're very immature. We can't deal with it. But if you really think about it, what's really interesting is we are people, spirits, souls of intellect that are trapped in these physical bodies. And these physical bodies are aging, and they will eventually kill us. You can't escape that.
Yeah.
However, now, when I talk about sexuality, there is procreation, which is one thing. Getting together, using the tools of our bodies to create more life. That's fine. That's not sexuality. That's procreation. Sexuality is that, this feels good, so let's build a whole bunch of ritual stuff around it. But it's amazing that we, as these beings, can take such amazing physical pleasure from congress with another person. Like if you are with somebody that knows how to touch you, or knows how to, I won't get into it, but knows what to do. It's amazing the transcendent experience that you can have with that person.
Yeah.
And based on imagination, creativity, and simple touch.
Yeah.
It's funny. My Gilbert, my bigger dog, loves when I scritch his neck right underneath his ears.
Yeah.
Like he's in ecstasy.
Yeah.
Well, when you have someone that knows how to scritch your ears, or euphemistically somewhere else, and you can feel that same thing, it's amazing when you can find somebody who does that for you. Because not everybody does, and not everyone's skillful about it. And you think about the fact that in our finite little existences, if you can find somebody that can take that physical existence of yours and make it transcend it through their own idea of touch or whatever, that's sexuality. Sexuality helps you leap beyond simple existence and really find the physical transcendent. And it's such a weird, when you think about it, it's so bizarre that, I don't think about my body when I walk around. I'm seeing the world through my eyes. I'm looking around. I'm not thinking about because I don't have any aches and pains or whatever, but I'm in a 6'1" fleshy meat sack that has heart pumping and blood going everywhere and all this stuff. But really, I'm only in my head going, well, what am I thinking about right now? What am I seeing? I want to build a model. I want to watch a Blu-ray. I want to buy a 4K. I want to go to the San Diego Comic-Con and see if I can find a signed copy of Avengers Annual 10. I mean, you're thinking about all this stuff, and yet you're a being of ethereal intellect that is being contained within this ambulatory, weird physical shell.
Yeah.
That at any one moment could fail you. and that's how we live every single day. And we never think about it. We just don't think about it.
Yeah, we don't.
It's wild, man. It's a wild existence. And when it's over, I mean, you ebb out of existence, and it's like, wow, all the work I put in, just that's it?
Yeah.
Don't I get a ribbon to take to the afterlife and go, hey man, look what I did?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You know what's great? The fact is, doesn't matter how long. We're friends. We've never met physically. We're friends, we're talking, we're conveying ideas, and hopefully the people watching this will get something out of it.
Yeah. And I think they have. I think that's why they tune in.
I
They
do
get
too.
so many different perspectives, whether it's from a cinematic aspect, life in general. They get life, messages, and just we. I mean, that's the spirit of everything. There was always content that we can dive into and have a discussion about. Even if there's differences in opinions. I think, and that's the thing is like people have to learn that at the end of the day, even though we agree and disagree on certain things, at the end of the day, it's humanity, and it's a space that we can actually all fellowship and have these conversations. I love that. I love that this space has, and it's all. And the thing is, I mean, we've taken, you know, the aspect of entertainment. That's what we're here to talk about is entertainment, films, books, movies, music, stuff like that, collectibles, figures, and
Action
all that.
figures, yes.
Exactly, that all day. Speaking of which, I got my Harley, my Arkham Asylum
Oh,
Harley
you
sitting right
did.
there. Yeah, I got that today. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. But yeah, so that's what I'm saying. We have a space where we can talk about these things, and people actually tune in because we're touching on points that they can they're familiar with and they can relate to, and they think that specifically we are talking to them, which we are. We are. So yeah.
So, I don't want to keep you out of the conversation. I feel like we've been yammering away. Do you buy it? I mean, what do you think? I mean, obviously, you like your eroticism. I mean, let me ask you this. Obviously, I'm also a great fan of human sexuality in all its myriad forms. But when you think about it, I mean, it's kind of goofy, isn't it? Like all of eroticism and things are like, and I love it. I mean, but it's still it is kind of goofy. There's a Star Trek episode called By Any Other Name. And there's Barbara Boucher is one of the most unbelievably beautiful women that ever appeared on television. She's actually an alien from the Andromeda galaxy. She's a giant tentacled monster that's taken the form of humanity. And she's talking to Kirk. She's like, I don't get it. Why has your species spent so much time writing about this one biological act? I don't get it. And Kirk literally lays the smack down on her, takes her in his arms, and even though he knows she's some giant tentacled, non-human looking creature from the Andromeda galaxy, she's taking human form, and Kirk's like, all right. And Kirk takes her to town, man. And presumably he is a cunning linguist and made sure that she had a good time. And after this alien from the Andromeda galaxy is like, basically, I'm paraphrasing, she's like, oh, I get it. Because if you just look at it for like, okay, yes, there's this mechanism that we have for procreation, but sexuality, we might use the same equipment, but it's a very different thing. Isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same reason why I went and attended the panel on romance and science fiction, horror, and fantasy. That's why I was there, because I think that it's just needed in a lot of the stories, and just
But-
have to.
Well, wait.
know.
Let me ask you this. You say it's needed in a lot of stories. I agree with you. But why do you think it is?
Because it just is a very interesting topic, and people seem to enjoy it.
But here's what. Okay. I think science fiction, fantasy, and horror has always used sexuality in a fairly progressive way. And sexuality is removed from procreation. It's imaginative, it's intellectual, it's creative. I mean, the idea that we can be turned on by our fellow human beings just by their touch or their taste or their smell is pretty crazy. I mean, it's if you think about it, but it's wonderful too, because it's the only way that we as spiritual, intellectual beings, like when you are with somebody that knows how to touch you in that way you want to be touched. It's someone who's outside of you, who understands what you and your body and how it connects wants. And that's like the most amazing thing in the world. And let's take it even further. I mean, I don't care if you want to dress up as a furry. I don't care if you want to be pegged. I don't care if you want to have the ALS challenge and someone dump ice water on you. Whatever people want. I'm all about whatever you guys want. It's great because it's a combination of creativity, intellectualism, and your own body. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing, and I think it's awesome. And no one deals with it better than sexuality. Deals with it better. No one deals with sexuality better than science fiction, fantasy, and horror. It's always the first place that's more accepting of all of those things, and I think it delves into that. I mean, you can read the story of O if you want, but you can also read John Norman's gore novels too. I'm dating myself, but okay. What do you think? Am I wrong?
Well, I think you make a good point in it, and to be honest with you, it's such a strong driving factor in our lives that it's to ignore it. It's like you're ignoring part of your human existence.
Totally agree. So why is it that we're so weird, especially in America? Why are we so whacked out about it?
I think if we start with nudity and get over nudity, I think that might be a step in the right direction.
Isn't it weird though that we have such a like we believe that, like some people say, like when a man sees a woman nude, he can't help himself, which I think is so bizarre. I mean, nudity, I think you're right. Like why do we have such a problem with it in this country?
I don't know. I don't know if it's a problem. I mean, I think, maybe some people don't care for it, but I don't know if I would say it's a problem, but maybe
Well, what about like breastfeeding? Breastfeeding in public, the most natural thing in the world to do. And there are people that get freaked out that happens. I don't get that. I'm like, you mean the actual function of the human body, the way it's designed to do what it's supposed to do? That's not something you can have happen, or people have a problem with that. But in this country, people do. It's a weird thing. I don't get it. Why is it? I don't understand. Like, why don't we understand the basic functions of the human body in this country?
Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't understand the basic functions of the human body, but I can't explain why. I just hope that they can appreciate seeing, beautiful, love-making scenes or sex scenes in science fiction, fantasy, and horror from this point on.
God bless you. Yes, I agree. I am with you. But it's frustrating. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, I think sometimes I think we live like sometimes even in an over sexually advanced, like people just over sexualize a lot of things. Like a lot of things aren't even left up to the imagination anymore. We see it on social media. Like, I mean, you scroll across your story and there's always someone posing a certain way. It's like sexuality and nudity, and it's less of an art form and an emotional experience and just basically a marvel, and is more of a money making machine now. You know what I mean? People basically find ways to basically make money off of it now. And again, it's certain things that I hold sacred. I look at, I talk to Toya about it all the time. We have this conversation about it, and you look at it now and it's just like, what it's just it's nothing's left up to the imagination anymore. And I think it's just like the fun is literally, Rob, the fun is taken out of sexuality, bro.
Dude, I have to tell you, I completely agree. I mean, I was a horny kid, and I was very precocious that way. And I have to tell you, one of the great joys in life was to have a girlfriend, or even an encounter at a party you didn't even know was going to happen, and you could spend time with someone else. And I mean, I remember like making out with a girl, and it would take you 3 hours before you'd have the courage to put your hand up her shirt, and she was waiting the whole time. She wanted you to, but you didn't know it. And then it took 3 hours, and by the time you actually finally got to her nipple, the garage door opened, her parents came home, and you had to leave.
Yeah, they go.
It was brutal, and it was and I think now, I mean, now we live in a world where, I mean, girls are OnlyFans. They're cam girls. They have sexuality has been more commodified than it's ever been in human history. Yeah. And we don't know what the damage with that is going to be, but I think human sexuality is something is a sacred, great thing.
You know what? It's crazy, bro. Like, I miss the days. Yeah, now I miss the days of when we were teenagers, bro. And you used to get that phone call, and she'd be like, "My mom and dad left.
Oh,
They
dude.
won't be back. They won't be back for a few hours, or they're gone. Yo, you should come over." And I don't care what you were doing at that time, you will make it. If you don't have a ride, you were getting over her house running as quickly as you can. And just the feel and the anticipation and the mystery, and you're sitting you're sitting down, bro. Like those are the things, because the thing is, it was like you had never, even if you've never seen her naked before, you've always imagined it, and then for that to come into fruition, and you're like, yo, I cannot wait to get over there. The entire time you're saying, I cannot wait. You're making sure like everything, like you don't have performance issues. You're thinking in your head like what you're gonna do, and then you get there, and then like, I loved always when you sit beside her, and before everything happens, it's that heavy breathing. It's always that heavy breathing, that anticipation. I miss that, and that was the excitement of sexuality. Now it's like people are willingly wanting you to see everything.
My first girlfriend, starting at 13, and we were very advanced, would call me, and I lived about 3 miles from her house. I used to go out. We had a split level house. I had to go out the bathroom window on the second story and jump off the roof of my house. I had to jump off so I'd jump, and I would get on my bike, and I would ride 3 miles, and she lived off East Mercer Way. If you know Mercer Island, East Mercer Way, I'd go down a hill, and I had to go through someone's backyard, and then I'd bring my bike down, and I would crawl in her window, her bedroom, big house, crawl in her window, and the shenanigans would happen. They were fantastic. And then it's like a school night. It's 3 a.m. You crawl back out the window, you ride back home, and I get to my house. Now, I had to go into the backyard and be really quiet and open the back gate, and then climb up on the fence to get up on the roof and go back into the bedroom window and get back into my room at 3:30 or 3:45 in the morning. And by the way, let me just face it, tell you, my cheeks were still wet. I'm just saying, not from kissing. And it was fan-frickin-tastic. And
did you ever have, like, check this out. Did you ever have it to the point where you had to have it so much, and it was you and your girl, or even somebody you met, and y'all were just working on things, and you had to sneak her in your house? And it never fails that when you try to sneak them in your house, it is always that one damn step that creaks. I'm like, the sounds, it would never make a sound when you by yourself. But when you're trying to sneak somebody in your room, it's the worst. It's just like, yo, you have to be Mission Impossible to get somebody in your room and out before anybody. Oh my God.
I got a story. Can I tell a story? You're gonna like a story.
And Robert, it is almost 4:00 now.
Yes, we'll go. Let me tell us one story. This, by the way, is a true story. Mm-hmm. This was the summer. To be honest, I don't remember if I think it was the summer between my junior and senior year in high school. Mm-hmm. The first girl that I ever kissed, I won't use her name. The first girl I ever kissed. So the first girl I ever kissed, who I was friends with, lived down the street, very beautiful girl. One day comes to my house, and she says to me, she literally, and this is the weirdest, crazy thing. So she's on my front door, and she says to me, I want to lose my virginity.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And now it's like 10:30 in the morning on like a Thursday in the summer. I'm not working. And she goes, I'd like to do it now. And I'd like to do it with you. Wow. And I'm like, you're not going to say no to this. No, but it's still like 10:30 in the morning on a Thursday. And you're like, the sun is bright. It's the sun. And I'm like, and I'm thinking, I'm like, well, my mom's gone. I don't even know where my mom is. My sister's not home. I'm like, okay. So like we go up into my room, and I'm like, are you sure you want to? Like, I'm like, because I'm thinking this is such a weird experience. I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? And she and I have known each other. Like, she was the first girl I ever kissed. So it's like we've known each other. We've been friends for such a long period of time, but we've never, other than kissing underneath my house. And I'm like, okay, so it was so weird and awkward, and but it was also incredibly exciting. And so we start like making out and stuff, and touching each other and all this. And it was very funny because she had this, clearly she had a vision in her mind about how this was going to go. Yeah. And I'm letting her lead. I'm like, this is so, I'm like, go ahead. And it was all good. It was all good, and things are progressing the way they should. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Yes.
And it had gone on for like a half an hour. We're like on my bed. We have nothing on, and it's now probably 11:45 in the morning on a Thursday and everything we're getting to where we want to be, and it's hot and heavy. And my bedroom is above our, so we had a 2-story house and a split level here. So here's the garage door, here's my bedroom. And like 11:15, 11:20, the garage door opens and Mom comes home for like the grocery store. And I'm in this whole thing. I'm like, I got nothing on. There's all kinds of goodness happening. And all of a sudden, when the parents come home, it's not like you're like, it's okay, baby. No, it's like the whole world just like, you're like, fuck! Ah! Everything goes up like, oh my God. And we're like pulling on our pants and all this shit. It's great. Yeah. My mom, it's not like my mom was going to come up into my bedroom knowing anything. She didn't know what was going on. She wasn't even here. But we are freaking out. Like, we're completely freaking out.
Man.
Completely freaking out. And,
cock blocking parents.
Man. I mean, it was so like we're pulling on our clothes, and it's so, and we're all like trying to be all cool. You're trying to be cool.
Yeah.
My mom had no idea. No one cares. No one knew. We didn't know that. And they were trying to be all cool, and I'm like, what am I didn't care, but she's freaking out. And by the way, my mom knew this girl, known her for years. My mother, if she had walked in on us doing anything, my mother would never say anything. She'd be, oh, hi, how are you? She would have said hello. She wouldn't even thought twice because she's known us since we were kids, little kids. Yeah. And yet it was all freaked out. And I'm like, God damn it, Mom. Jesus Christ. To this day, I'm telling a story right now. This had to have happened in 1984, summer of 84 to 85. And I'm still, it's November 27th at 3:52 in the morning, Pacific time, in 2021. And I'm still pissed that my mom came home at 11:15. Like, couldn't she have come home an hour later?
Yeah.
Didn't.
Yeah. just wait. Just wait. It's always timing, bro. It's always the time. It's always the wrong time.
It was such an erotic experience, though.
Yeah.
Girl shows up, literally shows up on your doorstep, and you're like, and she tells you this, you're like, really? This is the kind of shit that happened. If you told people this, they'd never believe it. But it was true.
But it was true. That's what it's all about.
But we never quite got there.
It's like, damn. It's like, look around. You're like, you're thinking about it right now, replaying it like, damn. If only it would have been like 10 minutes early.
My mother, if there's any way my mother could fuck up a teenage sexual experience without knowing she was doing it, oh, she would.
Yeah.
One day I'm going to tell my mom, she's 82 now. One day when she's 83 or 84, I'm going to sit her down and I'm going to go, Mom, there's like 10 things you owe me for. And I'm gonna tell you when they are. Please. Yeah. Anyway. You don't seem to be buying any of this.
I was just listening. I don't share my sexual experiences online, but I was just listening to your story, and parents do stuff like this. So.
Well, I didn't have a sexual experience. I was trying to have one. But no, that actually is a true story. That is a true story, and it was didn't.
I'm sure you imagined more was going to happen, Robert.
Oh no, it was going to be fantastic, and it was great. But at the time, look, the whole thing was I was given a gift, like this crazy gift on a Thursday morning at like 10:30. Didn't expect it. Didn't know it was going to happen. Yeah, as a matter of fact, most of my life I've had those kinds of crazy, weird experiences. But I think I wonder now with social media, when you can log online and see anything, it's different now. It's just, there used to be an innocence about all of it that's been robbed of us in the modern age. Or not. Maybe not. I don't know.
It's a good question.
I would love to know. I don't know. Like at the time, how do people, if you can log on to a computer and you can go to Pornhub or RedTube or YouTube or YouPorn or whatever porn site you want to go to, and you can see all of this stuff. We couldn't. We would walk into the woods to find a stash of Playboys. But now that we did, for real. And now that you can do this, how does that change society? I don't know.
It literally is taking the fun out of everything. Because like I said, it's not left to the imagination. The adventure. But it is, that's the thing. The adventure is gone. Because now you can just do it from the click of a button on your phone or a site. The adventure of it is gone. Getting to the destination now, when everything is right there in front of you. The destination was always fun. The journey was always the story. And now we don't have that anymore because everything's at your fingertips. So
I mean, making out with a girl for 3 hours. 3 hours, that was the most amazing, like it would never get old. It was so incredible. Just feeling a girl hold you and you held her and you could smell her hair and kiss her neck and try fumble with her bra if it was with one hand. That was, all of that. That was amazing. It was an incredible experience. It was longer than Apocalypse Now. It's just to try and touch her boob.
The extended version.
That was amazing. Those were the days, man. There was no online porn. You had to have a finesse game. You had to know how to kiss, man.
I live my life through movies like Porky's, movies like Revenge of the Nerd, those movies were like the story of our lives, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the thing is, it's like because every teenage kid experienced those things, man. Like, well, now I don't know, but back then we did. You know what I mean?
Well,
We
now
had so much
it's
fun.
it's like when you have everything in front of you, I don't even.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing: the things you can watch online would scare the shit out of me. I'd be like, I can't live up to this. I can't do this. I mean, like, I don't even know how you would do this. You know, I just want to kiss a girl and touch her boob. I mean, and watching online pornography. If you're 10 years old logging on, and I'd find that there's no wonder that the rates of teen sexual activity are dropping. I'd be intimidated too. I'd just descend back into video games or something.
Well, I think this was a great show, Robert.
Yes, ma'am. We're done. Let's end this show. It's 4:00 in the morning. It's 4:00 where you and I are in the same time zone.
We are for once. How about that?
My God. Well, this has been a good show. It has been a good show. Now I'm going to go to bed thinking about that one experience that my mom fucked up for me. I'm going to call her tomorrow and go, did you know what you did? She's like, what? It was good. It was fun. But anyway, Lael, a great show. Lael, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at the 1/6 Scale Man YouTube channel. First off, like I said, we have great content over there. Where Mondays we talk about. Actually, Sunday, you can actually tune in at 6. I think it's between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. I think I haven't mapped out the time, but we'll have it by tomorrow. Where we're going to do the Take Your Position live, where we actually choose. I think we're doing a Hawkeye figure this week.
Wow, Ronan.
Yeah, Ronan, the Hawkeye Ronan figure. So we're going to actually pose that live. It's going to be me and Iron Logan. So it's our first official show where we actually pose the figures. We have discussions about the series, but more so about posing figures and like the nostalgia of that actual figure itself. So tune in for that. Monday it will be Comic Book Talk with Friends, where we'll actually talk about the first 2 episodes, fully spoiler about the first 2 episodes of Hawkeye. Of course, I think we'll be on Justin's show Tuesday, I believe, definitely. And then Wednesday, we actually have content as well with Say What, where we also go over some figures and collecting and stuff like that. And then Thursday, there will be Uncivilized Scoundrels. We'll basically have all Star Wars content. So we'll definitely have that discussion. And there's a lot to talk about, whether it's Kathleen Kennedy, whether it's, what's going on with her renewal, and I have some things to say about that because which is surprising. There's a lot of things that I can't wait for that discussion. We'll basically be prepping ourselves for Boba, Book of Boba, talking about some of the releases and what we can expect that's going to be coming soon. So there's so much in the realm of Star Wars now that we're getting. And on top of that we finally got, I forget the actress's name who's going to be portraying Sabine, the live action Sabine Wren.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right.
So we'll basically be talking about that as well. So, yeah, tune in for that. I also have 3 videos that I'll be putting out to Take Your Position. One with definitely the Harley Quinn, Arkham Harley Quinn. Also, I have tomorrow, I had to re-edit and reshoot the Night Vigilante, aka Nightwing video. So that's going to be coming tomorrow. It's going to be a complete pose-up video about that. And also I'm doing a mashup pose-up video between Quicksilver and the Flash. So we're
nice.
So that's going to be incredible. So stay tuned for that.
And more coverage from the San Diego Comic-Con?
I don't know. I haven't. This is the first time I've covered it. Is tonight on your show, so maybe I will do a video. I hadn't thought about doing that. I just kind of enjoying myself first.
Do you have a phone with you?
I do. Yes.
Do you have a phone with a video camera?
I do.
Okay, do me a favor. Do this favor for me. Just take that camera and turn it around on yourself. Just shoot me a couple of 20-second videos.
I have, Robert.
Of today?
Yes.
Where are they?
I haven't sent it to you yet.
Well, send them to me. I'll play them on Midnight Metal tomorrow night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
just shoot them to me. If you shoot them to me, and tomorrow too, I'll put them together. I'll put them together. I'll play them on the opening of the show tomorrow night.
Okay. All right. I'll send them to you. You'll get that.
And I'll also put them up singularly, just as a video unto themselves, because it'll all be
Okay,
the same
great.
thing. But do it
Okay.
because it'll be topical and fun.
It will be topical and fun. And, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, the first thing I'm going to be watching is Star Trek The Undiscovered Country. So that's going to be a nice way to start off Comic-Con tomorrow morning.
Don't wait for the translation. Answer me now. So good.
And then, of course, I have my channel, Positive Fandom, and I'm still doing a continuing series with Stubble and McShave. We're going to be doing episode 4 soon, and a bunch of other videos that I have on there, as well as streaming with Midnight's Edge, and with the ladies from Toxic Femininity on Mondays, and of course, Uncivilized Scoundrels on Thursdays, and that's what I'm up to right now. So.
Well, that is fantastic. And on that note, Midnight Metal Special Order 66. We didn't die. We were not gunned down by clones. The Jedi Knights live to fight another day. I want to thank my co-hosts here, Lael, Rockwell, and Mmmm, for another great episode of Midnight Metal.
Yes.
I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel via Super Chats and tips. I want to thank my moderators. Twin Flicks is here still.
And me. I moderated tonight.
Mmmm is moderating tonight. How many people are on camera talent and moderate at the same time? Fantastic. So thank you all. I will be back. If I don't go to San Diego, it looks like I can't. Probably Sunday if I can. Because I actually have a work project I'm doing, which just came up. But I want to thank you all for being here. And as always, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to the Post-Geek Singularity, this will be the end of Midnight Metal episode Special Order 66. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to my co-hosts. And as always, have a better night.